Yeah, I mean, it's just Luke Ford and the dangers of e-personality. And he's an introvert, incel or whatever. And when he comes out on the internet, he has this, like the dark side of his subconscious becomes conscious. I mean, to me, it's obvious. It's what happens. It's what's happening to you on the same way. But your unconscious, your subconscious is different than Gandalf's subconscious.
Logic and science dictate that not only consciousness doesn't exist, consciousness is in fact scientifically impossible. And like, yes, it is going to involve math and calculus and science and computer programming. I'm sorry. And that have different implications of the process with the connection between the levels of a person's soul and how it reincarnates.
But I'm not going to spur on the issue because I'm not a woman. It's not my issue.
About how one day you're going to fulfill the Canadian dream or the American dream. So you watch Seinfeld and say, oh, I could do it. And I'm going to go out tomorrow and go to work and have a great day, and I'm going to be successful. And one day I'm going to have my own apartment. I'm going to have my own parties with my own friends over, and I'm going to have my own possessions. I'm going to see things that I want and just buy them.
Yeah, but that's just so to say, a worthless opinion of yours.
Hello and welcome back to Week in Review with the one and only Doooovid. Very happy to be joined here this Sunday evening. Let's switch over. There we go. Hello, Paul Riccitelli, already waiting in the chat. Thank you so much for joining. I will hand it over to Doooovid for the intros. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Okay, Jennifer, good to be back. It's kind of a crazy week for me this week, largely due to bad weather. So I didn't do too much streaming. I called into Charles Moskowitz for like 20 minutes on Thursday. On Wednesday afternoon, I had flooding, and your power went out at about 4 in the afternoon on Wednesday, and I checked the weather channel, and they said storm warning, storm advisory, 70-mile-an-hour winds, and the power went out instantly. And it was really bad. It was one of the worst outages in a long time. Over 800,000 people, almost 10% of Michigan lost power. In Metro Detroit, 25% of all of Michigan lost power, and it took a few days to get back on. I still had power outage today, so I was out Wednesday to Friday. Friday I had power back till Saturday night, and then it went out again Saturday night about 9:15, and came back early this afternoon, and it briefly went out, and now it appears to be back on. Although the official word from the power company is it's supposed to be on by 11:30 tonight, so it's remotely possible I'm going to lose power again, and that was coupled with a flood level rains. We talked about whether it's the global warming that was the cause of it, but um, there was from when the storm happened Wednesday with the 70-mile-an-hour winds, there was about half an inch to an inch of rain that fell, and the power went out. So I manually was able to take buckets from my sump pump and to go underground like a good squat and put it down the drain. My tub, connected to my uh, washer and dryer, and then I and then but overnight there was a huge rainstorm. They said it was 2 to 3 inches in my area, and some places in Michigan it was a full 4 inches of rain. So let me just do a quick screen share just to show people what this um, like what is sump pump and why houses flood. So basically, what happens is over a period of time, the let's make this a little bigger. So if you look at like a typical suburban house, you have a 2-story house, 5 bedrooms with a basement, and ground levels about even with my basement is maybe like a foot uh, below ground level. So right now I'm sitting about a foot above ground level. My basement has maybe even a foot and a half. My basement has window, so you could see a little light in. And what happens is the backfill over time. My house about 40 years old, as the soil erodes and also under the house. So not just around the house, but uh, sorry, better. Okay, sorry, I didn't want. I wanted. So, I mean, this is a whole sump pump system, but what happens is soil erodes and moves out from under the house, and it creates a void that fills up during flooding, during heavy rains, or at the end of the season where it starts getting warmer, and where the ground has quite a bit of water during the colder period, and then as it gets warmer, most of the ground moves into the air, and the water stays around the house. So my house is about 1,800 square feet, and with a basement. So they estimate anywhere from like 1,500 to 2,500 gallons of water could be around the house and below the house, and that just eats at the concrete, and eventually it finds cracks and holes in the concrete and causes a basement to flood. Like the least action principle, and you have a bunch of empty space, and you have water that is relatively very heavy pushing up against the house, eating away, and eventually finds a hole, and that makes the hole bigger. And so a sump pump, what mine does is I'm going to show uh, pictures actually from my Facebook. I was in University of Michigan um, construction management school when I had my sump pump put in, and I even took pictures of what they did. But basically, they a more expensive system, they would have dug around the whole house, and that might have cost even like $20,000. But here they jackhammered um, around my basement, and they installed a drainage system, which is basically a pipe that has holes in it with rocks around it that collects the water, and then that drains into a sump pump, and then the sump pump uh, pushes the water outside of my house. And in some places, you would be able to drain the water straight into the sewage, but in my area, they don't allow that because they're worried about too much water that um, would overflow the local sewage. So here you could see that the construction workers, they jackhammered a little around um, the whole of my basement. They make a little like corridor, and then they filled it in with these pipes that have holes in it, and rocks, and they created like a safe corridor for my house inside, so that it wouldn't create too much dust, and then they laid the pipes and the rocks, and um, and then here's the sump pump that it collects into. So it's sloped down all around the house, so it drains the water into the sump pump, and then the sump pump will expel the water outside of the house. And then they relayed the concrete and sealed everything up, and here it is, the finished sump pump and the concrete relayed, and this sump pump expels the water outside of the house. And if they if it and this cost close to $7,000, so it's not particularly cheap, but it's a pretty necessary thing for a lot of people in suburban areas. Flooding is a very common thing. So in the flooding, the power went off, so the sump pump, wasn't working, and it wasn't able to expel the water. So, but at least, instead of the water flooding, the water drains into the sump pump, and I could manually take buckets from the sump pump and put it in my tub that's next to my washer and dryer, the sink downstairs. And so I literally hundreds of buckets, but around the house, thousands of gallons of water for a typical suburban house after decades of soil erosion could be garnered to so it was a real pain combined with power outage. So I'm not sure if Jennifer could give me a full screen. I just ordered one of these, and this was like $250, and you could see it's basically a battery pack. It's a generator. You plug it in, and now it's 84% charged. With and it has a certain amount of power storage for for the house. For my sump pump operating, it only operates for like 120 minutes. So I mean, the sump pump you don't run completely, but so even this is insufficient. Like I have to get a few of those, and this was like $225. You get bigger generators. You could get one of those that.
I hope none of your Amazon stuff got messed up.
Well, really, the only flooding is the basement. Like my house wouldn't have flooded here in this area. Only the basement flooded, and I don't have too much, value. Just some, boxes from equipment and stuff, like in the basement. So nothing too valuable in the basement. But you don't want to let water, water really damages houses. So you don't want to let water sit there. You want to drain it as quickly as possible. But because I know I have flooding, I don't store stuff in the basement, preemptively, because know the potential for flooding. And in this area, you have to be pretty careful about even considering finishing your basement, and probably it's going to be a major disaster. Probably in my area, there's a lot of people who probably had huge basement water damage. So the combination of flooding with power outages is just devastating. And people have generators. Like generators are expensive. You could have gas generators, but gas generators could release carbon monoxide, are very dangerous. So you could try to run the generator outside and feed the power inside, or you could basically get battery packs. Maybe some people have solar panels. You have to look more. Now that I had the tree cut down in front of my house, I might have the tree in the backyard cut down also. It's probably getting to the point of being dangerous. Maybe with both of those trees cut down, I would be able to have solar panels on my roof that would be able to store battery packs. Battery packs are kind of expensive. I have to buy thousands of dollars of battery packs.
And you have to worry about a possible fire with the spent batteries. So I have the solar power, but I'm still not sold on the batteries. But yeah, that would be awesome. I think it's maybe worth waiting a bit just to get the technology a little better, a little cheaper, a little less flammable. Inflammable means flammable.
Yeah, and thank God my parents have a generator, and they didn't even lose power. So I was able to bring my food to the refrigerator and freezer in their house. And actually, even last night, I went over to my parents late at night, and they have a freezer in their garage. So I just put without even waking them up, I just put my stuff in the refrigerator and freezer in their garage. And my dad was saying, like in the past, you lost power outages, your food spoils. So the first 2 days I was running to the gas station buying ice, just to maintain a little bit. So it's a big pain. I'd mentioned to Jennifer a desire possibly to stream about the IPCC report on global warming. The report's probably not that much to stream, but I might do a public study session on climate change, global warming. And, so the area I'm in Michigan is not expected to see temperature increases because of all the water and trees, but it's expected to see high wind speeds and flooding. So unfortunately, like global warming might actually be beneficial to Michigan and to the climate, make it a little bit nicer if you see like the wildfires and various negative effects. But the downside is the heavy wind speeds and flooding, and disastrous to have them combined at the first time, because most of the technology to get you through things like flooding are electricity dependent. So that was a huge pain. I called into Charles Moskowitz, and we discussed the infrastructure bill, and a little bit about the politics, and the DTE, Detroit Edison. There's Con Edison, and how this works, and why this infrastructure bill might not, just going to most likely be wasted money that's not even going to solve the basic things. And maybe we'll talk about tragedy of the commons, because it's really an example of tragedy of the commons. Just nobody cares. Everybody's trying to take as much advantage for themselves as possible. And on the greater collective, you have these power outages, and everybody's at the whim of the power company. And the power company basically,
it's like the plot of a cheesy comic book. It reminds me of Gargoyles or something. You ever see that show? Probably too young for you.
Yeah, I'm not even sure. But yeah, man, tragedy of the commons basically. And because the trees in this area, like I was mentioning on Charles Moskowitz, most of the houses were built 40, 50 years ago. And they planted trees, and now a lot of these trees are growing straight into the wires. It's been like that for a decade. But every year the trees go straight into the wire, and there's a big storm, especially with increased wind speeds, possibly due to global warming, which is pressing on these older trees, causes the branches to fall. And this time there were 3,100 3,100 downed power lines, taking 3-4 days. There's still close to 100,000 people without power, but just devastating for the area. And the power company, people complain about their price. The power company, they can't really drop people who don't pay. Also, like the current feminism, political correctness, like most construction engineering people are on the right, and in urban areas they're controlled by leftist government. So they have a lot of things like putting women in charge, diversity, training in various things, and there's a lot of disconnect between the engineering community and the government. And so basically they only do things after they basically only fix things after there's a problem, the power goes out. And for the average person, they don't, everyone's complaining so much about the price of electricity already, that no one wants to preemptively pay more to fix the system. And so just call it a large travesty of the commons. So that was unfortunately took up my week, although I got a lot of exercise. Honestly, draining hundreds of buckets. It's like a squat, lifting a bucket, maybe about 20 pounds of water, maybe 15 pounds of water, but I got to go below surface grade, bend down, maybe even like 2 feet below surface to, not 2 feet, but like a foot below surface to, fill the bucket with water and then pick it up. And I carried about 10 feet. I did that hundreds of times. And, so I actually felt pretty good to have so much exercise. And I swam for the first time today. I went, my, parents had a endless pool put in, one of these treadmill pools. So I swam today, and I hadn't swam in like over a decade. And, regular swimming and I even did the butterfly. So maybe I'll try to get back into it. I'm almost below 200 pounds. I don't think I've been below 200 pounds.
Tall are you, sorry?
6 feet tall.
And you're just now under 200 pounds? Nice job, Doooovid.
Yeah, I mean, I probably should be about 100 now. I put on quite a bit of muscle because I do a lot of physical labor. I'm always doing serious lifting. So I'd probably be about 190. and I'd probably be athletic about 180. Over 200, I'm just borderline overweight. I was at the dentist the other day, and my blood pressure was in the 120s, which is not quite high blood pressure, but like hypertension. So I thought I'd try to lose some weight. I'd been up to almost like 220, which is a little bit of a belly. So yeah, I'm trying to get under 200 pounds, and felt good to be active, and have a little bit of back pain. So I get lose a little weight, the back pain goes away, at least largely. So
Yeah, I'm
I
a
guess
solid 132. And I'm like 11% body fat. So I suppose
Yeah.
I miss my calling, which is being some sort of like bodybuilding instructor. Except I'd be telling people to lose their muscles, their superfluous muscles. Anyway, why don't we do the intro, chant? Because I don't think we've done it yet. I've got it loaded though. Just wanted to.
I move like heavy boxes like all day for
Yes, you're
decades.
very Chad, but we should still do the intro because it's unchadly to not do the intro. I even have it loaded up. Lekadodi, is that anywhere near right?
Yeah, I may have talked about this or done this before. Anyone who goes to synagogue, this is the main prayer that is sung Friday night, and it goes back about 500 years to 400 years to the collection of Kabbalists in Svat, which include the Arizal and Yosef Karo and a few other famous names that to some extent changed Judaism after the Spanish expulsion. That there was a return to Israel, and for a period of time, this community in northern Israel spot was where the largest collection of sages were, because at the time Jerusalem wasn't the safest or hospitable place to be. And one of the Kabbalists wrote this poem, Lechad Dodi, which has become institutionalized, and basically all synagogues Friday night chant and sing this tune, and it's got a lot of stanzas, and there's hundreds of songs to it, maybe even thousands. The refrain, L'chad Dodi, Likras Kala, Pnei Shabbos Nikabla, behold my beloved, come meet the bride, the face of Sabbath, and welcome the face of Sabbath. And mystically, the bride is usually referred to Israel, or the Sabbath, and the connection between God and Israel, or the Sabbath in the Jewish people. And talking about like God is the husband and the Jewish people is the bride, or the Sabbath is the bride, or various interpretations. And there's 8 stanzas, and usually the tune is changed twice. So it usually starts with a slower tune, and then the last 4 stanzas is a quicker tune. And anyone who's been to a synagogue on Friday night, the last stanza, everyone stands up and turns around and then bows left and right to the last words, Boi Kala, come my bride, and then turns back around. And in Jewish mystical understanding, or even legalistically, that's the moment when a person accepts Sabbath, and it becomes Sabbath for the person when the whole congregation turns around. So there's a lot of beautiful songs to this, and I was thinking this one, it's kind of like a march, maybe a waltz, and it's a pretty common tune. Maybe any a lot of Jews who've heard this might. It's not that common, but it's semi-common that Jews might have heard this tune. And there's actually a podiatrist, a doctor in my local synagogue, and when he leads Friday night services, he usually uses this tune. Sometimes jokingly, when I speak to him, I'll use this tune just to talk to him, which is kind of like rapping. I've mentioned that in the past, like a bodkin, where you switch words to a popular tune to just like tell a story, most seen at weddings. So this is a pretty cute tune, and it usually the last 4 stanzas. So it's kind of a waltz. Yada-da-da-dum, yada-da-da-dum, bum-ba-ba-bum-bum-bum. Yada-da-da-da-da-dum. Ay-da-da-da-ya-yum, ay-ya-yum, mum, ay-ya-ya-ya-yum, yum, mum, bum, 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 bum. Yada-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-dum, ay-da-da-da-da-dum. Ya da 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 da. Ay da 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 ya ya my ya ya my yum. Ay ya 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 yum. Dum bum 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 bum. Ya ba bum 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 bum. Ya 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 mama ya 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 ya. Ya da da na 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 ma ya ma 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 ya ya ma 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 ma. Lechadodili kratkala Venetia Vasnikabila Lechadodili kratkala Venetia Vasnikabila Aha oh yum mama yum ayam mama yum yan na 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 ya yum by da ya 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 yum ayam mama 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 oh oh ya yum ayam mama yum ay 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 yum yan na 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 yan na na ya ya yum ayam mama 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 ya kado dili cross kala penesha bosne kabila le kado dili cross kala penesha bosne kabila. So I always find that as a cute tune, and it has this kind of slow start to it that's a march. So if you're a Jew who goes to synagogue, all you have to hear is those first few beats, this little yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 da. And it's also kind of a cute tune too. Like now is the time to start a weekend in review.
That's so
And
good.
even though me and Jennifer argued last week, hey, everybody, and it's a tune that's meant for congregational chanting, and it might have a little few difficult parts, but it also is designed to create, like it has like the a bridge, I guess musically you'd call it, to lead everyone together, and a pretty popular tune, although not like one that's used every week. So probably when I go to synagogue every week, I might only hear that tune a few weeks a year, but it is something that I'm not sure the origin. It's probably Eastern European, probably even over 100 years old, although I don't know the exact origins of that tune. So with that, welcome to Week in Review. Me and Jennifer a little beef last week. She wasn't so happy with the way that the guest went, and I guess Doovid's principles, where I just I don't really accept her as the world's greatest scientist. It's not the way I look at it. I'm not against
I
her.
know it's a big ask, and I'm glad we were able to talk about it, and everything's fine. And yeah, I don't have any hard feelings. I wanted to say that. I don't want to confuse the audience. Is really my main thing. So.
It's like Jennifer, I think, had a good week. She did 2 solo streams, so good for her. And her first of her math training sessions with Aaron Amihud and someone else who
I only did one solo stream, I think. The one last
and then
night.
yesterday you did.
Which I had a crutch for. I had the Amy Newman crutch. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah,
and then I had the guys on.
That Jennifer do her week in review and the 2 streams that she did on her channel, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit more about the Socratic method, and then I have a whole bunch of more stuff on consciousness and some stuff to share. There's this interesting report on survey of American Jews of color that maybe we'll look at that also. So Jennifer do her week in review, and I'll start loading up some of these links I collected during the week.
I made some clip sort of, I don't know how much, it could probably go on for quite a while because there's a whole bunch of different subjects, but.
So just do your week in review, and then if you want to do clips, we'll do that later.
Okay. Yeah, well, I thought about whatever was said, and it's like, I don't want to do a monologue. I probably never will, but I probably also don't want to write a book. Yet I probably will have to do that too, right? So, I felt really inspired by something someone said, but I feel like I can't say it because it's like private communication or whatever. So, I felt reheartened recently I'm feeling the love, and it's nice. As reticent as I am sometimes with the love, and I prefer the weirdos. I don't want to say hate because hate is such a strong word, but I won't name names, but we all know who the cadre of turds that orbits the perpetually flushing toilet of my e-persona, and we love them. I'll look at that, Doovid. Your chanting was quite popular today, so that's nice. I was happy with how the Aaron stream went. TBH, I don't see how it could have gone better. Just with regards to starting it up, and I was so happy that it didn't go into like either being boring or like hard to put a finger on exactly what it is, but I guess when people like shut down type deal, I don't think that even happened. You watched today, Doovid? Did you check it out, or no? If not, it's cool.
Which one? Your math one?
Yeah.
No, I two-speeded and maybe listened to about 10 minutes total, maybe only like 5 minutes. It seemed very basic. It seemed like, who was the second person besides Aaron?
Used to go by mediocre white male, which I then attempted to get him
to
that's fine. Embrace a name that was less self-destructive.
Okay, and the voice sounded familiar, but it sounded like their math was pretty far behind. Like they didn't even really know like algebra 1. Like even maybe they'd taken like in high school or something, but it sounded like their level of math knowledge was was like comparable to like 9th, 10th grade or something of I guess someone who took like medium high birth and what would have been expected.
Ouch. I like my apples metaphor at first because it got into fungibility, and I was ready to start playing clips from it, but I won't. But beginning, I liked it because it had a good metaphor, and at the end, it wrapped up nicely. We got into a bit of free flow chat. I couldn't believe I was able to do a 3-hour solo stream, but I kept hearing, the image of like the devil on your shoulder and then the angel on the other shoulder. Okay, well, if I have that, except it's just two Doovids. One's dressed as the devil, one's dressed as an angel, and they're both telling me the exact same thing. Just do a solo stream. God forbid, do a solo stream. So I'm like, okay, trying to get comfy here.
Get monetized. Doovid will give you more respect when you write me a check than anything else. Like, you want Doovid's respect, write me a check.
Well, I guess the audience will know when that happens. You seem to be unable to not betray your emotions. Yeah, so I thought this went really interestingly. The chat, I didn't respond as well to the chat as I could have, as there were new people in the chat, which always makes me feel for reasons I'm sure the longtime listeners will appreciate. So, all in all, it was pretty good. And I'm happy that I had a crutch to do a review on because I was like thinking, yeah, this is bloviating and self-indulgent. So why don't you go and figure out who this was a tribute to? Because it's a tribute to someone else on YouTube. Every little bit about that. And there's some little tasty references. Not one, but two Dennis Leary references. Can you find them? A veritable Where's Waldo of multi-layered learning fun. Otherwise, it was a good week for memes. That's all I can say. And I could go on, but why don't we bang through your articles? Hello?
Okay, so I'm going to do a screen share again. And today was actually the major Rath Yatha in Metro Detroit, which I skipped this year. And I love doing the broom service, like going with the broom before. But honestly, I was scared of COVID-19. Cases are up here. I started wearing a mask even like indoors around my mom. There's been about 1,500 cases a day. Even in my local Oakland County, Metro Detroit, the caseload is up to over 200 a day. So it's pretty bad, the situation. So I didn't end up going. And like I mentioned Luke last week, is the screen share working?
Pretty well. The chat comments are slightly. Let me see here.
So here's the first link. This is the official ISKCON governing body commission, local devotee Deva Madhava Das, who actually helped recruit at the University of Michigan, and now he's became from the senior management popular Hare Krishna devotees. I have him on my YouTube channel. When he first started becoming Krishna conscious, we used to do Harinam. Actually have tens of videos with him doing Harinam together in Detroit, University of Michigan. And this devotee from India, Chaitanya Charan, who has came to Metro Detroit a few times, God forbid he has a injury, walks with a crutch, but a Radhanath Swami disciple. And they talked somewhat a little bit about kind of the Indian white body dichotomy. And they're not quite up to like the group strategy point, but there's a little bit interesting conversation there. Here, Theology Unleashed with Arjun was he had on yesterday Hiridayananda Goswami, Dr. Howard Resnick, and they were talking about Jordan Peterson, where he was playing Jordan Peterson clips, and he was reacting. So it was a little bit interesting. I was in the chat on that one. We could talk about either one of those more. Here was an interesting, the Royal Institute, always keep up with that. They had two videos that were pretty good this week. This one, how science got weight loss wrong, talks about, what is a calorie and what does that have to do with eating. And it's actually pretty interesting. They talk about the original Atwater experiments where they actually, he actually burnt stuff and then collected, had people eat food and then collected their poop, as he says, their feces, and burnt it. And a lot of the calorie counts on food are based on these Atwater experiences. And he talks about what is the energy and the various things that go into a calorie count. And I've talked to a lot of people about weight loss, and I say that the key is calorie count. If you burn more calories than you eat, you're going to lose weight. And if you eat more calories than you use, you're going to gain weight. Although it's not quite that clear. And calories is like entropy. It's part of thermodynamics, is a measurement of heat. And if you thought about it's an interesting dynamic. So there's a lot of interesting chemistry in there. So if people are interested in that, I encourage them to watch that, get a more deeper understanding of what happens when we eat, and certainly dieting and weight loss, and I think another one from the Royal Institute also. Um, that was pretty good. Yeah, and this one also, Skylar Tivitz, who I think is at MIT and just wrote a book, What Can Intelligent Materials Do? And he talks about, what does it mean, intelligent materials, and the new direction of materials and like 3D printing, or just material science. Very interesting. Like, I streamed the foam show. I didn't have it. And okay, so I also have a lot of things on related to consciousness, some just new material that a lot of I hadn't had time to watch. Here's a new, I think this is at MIT, or it's combined Harvard, MIT, quite a few universities, and it's a seminar on brains, minds, and machines. I think it's an annual or semi-annual seminar. So it's 11 videos of top professors, academics talking about brains, minds, and machines. So I'll probably eventually, probably in the next few weeks, I'll end up watching all of these. So encourage people to check that out. I'll toss a few more links. So I saw this. Leo Phillis did this was part 2, but he did a stream on Are Electrons Conscious? And like I said, at least he's thinking about the right topics, and so he's coming out of the opposite side.
Whether electrons are conscious is the right topic.
I mean, he's thinking about consciousness and science, even if he's on the wrong side of the issue, so to say. At least he's thinking about science and consciousness.
Well, he barely even took a position, actually. So maybe he's not on. I did. Well, I watched. Here's what happened: is I was tuned into it, and then somebody in the chat's like, "Come over to this other stream because we're talking about this video." And I go over, and he's on the stream with a bunch of other people, and they're not talking about the video. So I kind of get sucked into this other side show.
I didn't actually watch that. I just.
But he didn't seem to be like concretely taking any position. So I guess it's like the base centrist meme.
So here's an Israeli philosopher, Nir Lahav. You say I commented if you heard of my multiple truth hypothesis, but he's publishing a paper called The Relativistic Theory of Consciousness, which is a little unclear what if it's just a physicalist view. He's claiming it's somewhere in between physicalism and dualism, or like a monism, but it's unclear exactly if he's saying anything new, or he's just kind of saying we're going to solve the hard problem of consciousness, and it's not what you think, but it's unclear. But it was a decent presentation, and I think he actually has a scientific paper that's going to be published soon. So interesting lecture, and it's at least they're thinking about it, thinking about the right topics. Here, interesting. This I only watched part of, but the topic was more interesting. Towards psychedelic apprenticeship. So a lot of people talk. I've talked about it quite a few times. The effect of drugs and mental experience, and a lot of times, like in practical use, you need a mentor to take drugs and walk you through drugs. And if you're talking through what would that look like in terms of a scientific approach towards a psychedelic apprenticeship. So anyone interested in that topic? This is from Amsterdam Research. I didn't have a chance to look at this yet. Only 11 subs. The 5th International Conference
Yikes.
on Holography, String Theory, Discovery, something. I don't even know the I can't even read what it is, but they just put a YouTube page together, and it looks like they have tens of hours of pretty heavy duty mathematics on this topic. So I didn't have a chance to watch any of these videos yet, but it looked pretty interesting, and it looked like high level overview of something me and Jennifer have talked about quite a bit. So the Science of Consciousness Conference posted the videos from last week, so they're up. The first day, 900 views. only a few hundred views. So I'd say they don't really get a ton of views. Even me and Jennifer's commentary isn't too far behind the amount of viewership that they got, but it's up. So
We've
I'll
got
probably-
the diehards, the ride or die, the posse. They don't have that. They are at that to each other already. So just saying.
Yeah, I don't need to stroke my own ego. I'm more likely to put myself down than to falsely stroke my own ego. And Jennifer, part of the dispute over our styles, I'm more likely to just be, no one likes me, no one takes me serious, than some sort of like false, like I'm awesome, I'm the best. But whatever it is, it's there. So I encourage people to watch that. This was a German DW, the German English documentary news. I watch them relatively frequent, and I check the German English channel quite often. And they had a documentary on conscientious military objections in Israel. This one followed just one girl who ends up spending 110 days in prison for refusing to join the IDF. And it was pretty interesting. People worried about thinking about Israel and the state of mandatory military service, including women. And if you're an ultra Orthodox Jew, you're exempt from military service, like in my debate with Judas Maccabeus. If not, you go to prison. And so if you're being a conscientious objector is very difficult. And so this documentary follows one girl who in talking with her family about not wanting to join the army, and then eventually going through probably like a year of documentary footage where she spends the time in prison, then gets out, and now is kind of like an anti-war activist. And also their documentary on Portugal's avocado farming was kind of interesting, like the mass industrial farming of avocados in Portugal, and then people against it due to environmental reasons. And here is my Charles Moskowitz stream. At about 36 minutes, I call in because of, God forbid, the power outage. So I just called in on the phone. Is a call-in show on Thursday, and we talk for about 15 minutes. I think I call in about 36 minutes in. Here, I showed this last week, the Mathematical Conscious Science page, a lot of good stuff. So here they actually had one on monism. So encourage people to specifically check out this one. Kelvin McQueen, he's one of the bigger names in Department of Philosophy, Chapman University. And this is from their conference on the collapse of the wave function and talking about monism. And there's another one specifically on, is that the same one? Whatever the link one was. So another one on monism from another professor. And so I encourage people to watch those who are more interested in higher level understanding of consciousness, and specifically the physics behind it, the mathematics. So last week, Crabcast came on, and we talked about. Let me save this for a second. So I got 4 links left. So you want to say anything real quick?
Please, that sounds like you're on a roll there. I'm just having some cheese, so go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to show some. We'll go over this a little bit. I have the Beyond the Count perspectives and lived experiences of Jews of color. So that I'll actually look at. Claire Caw debated James on the Amy Newman show about theocracy, and you give our comments. I think it was about even a little bit more professional, a little bit like more solid reasoning and arguments. Well, I think Claire got
sounded a little fucked up. TBH.
Yeah, so we could talk about this a little bit. So let me finish these other links. Here's a new survey about Detroit and immigration. They just released the new census data in Detroit, and like the white population all across America is shrinking, and also in Detroit. But this came from a pro-immigration, organization. It's talking about immigrant communities in Metro Detroit, and so it's an 80-page report for people who are more interested in immigration. And here it goes over 2 neighborhoods in Metro Detroit, and that have had a huge increase in immigration. Here's a map showing the age groups. The orange here is native Detroiters, and the the blue and green are the 2 neighborhoods that were studied. And you can see the aging, that Detroit's native population is more aging, and the immigrant population are having more kids and younger. In fact, the old grocery store right in the corner near where I live in Southfield, Michigan, has been shut down for years. It's been empty, like a blight eyesore, this empty store. Someone tried to open up a grocery store a few years ago and it failed. And now they opened up a senior medical care facility because declining population and aging population. So one of the interesting things is immigrants are bringing youth, and this is a bunch of data regarding economics, and this is largely a pro-immigrant perspective. So anyone more interested in that? Crabcast last week, he was on, and he talked about passive resistance. We talked about the Socratic method, and my theory, I guess, that the Socratic method, pure philosophical, like in terms for people who just want to know thyself and become better thinkers, but in popular usage like law school, that the Socratic method is connected to power asymmetry and the entrance to power. And then talked about martyrdom. If Jennifer wants to go more at it about the Socratic method and power asymmetries and kind of the low birth, high birth. And so Crabcast did a little ramble and talked about passive resistance, as opposed to like martyrdom. What do you do with the fact that no one likes me, everything's rigged against me, I took low birth, and God forbid if you try to change the system, they're just going to try to ruin your life or just have me killed, toss me into anonymous grave somewhere because I'm just a nobody from a poor family, spare me the life of atrocity, however it goes. But that karma is a certain fact. So these factors of so Crabcast little ramble on his reply to being on the show last week. So I'll show a few of these data from this Jews of Color survey. So interesting, Jews of Color, strongest connection is to Tikkun Olam. 76% of Jews of Color rate Tikkun Olam as being very important, next to passing Jewish identity to next generation, honoring parents and grandparents, 65% remembering the Holocaust, 61% Jewish holidays, only 32% caring for Israel. So, a little difference between the larger, so to say, white Jewish community and Jews of color. Also a feeling, like I said, that white supremacy is a bigger problem in the Jewish community in Israel than the West in general, is my perception. And, here also you say that 80% of Jews of color feel that we get discriminated against by our fellow Jews who are more white than us. That so the survey was pretty clear that Jews of color feel to some extent, not necessarily like, but to some extent left out, or a little bit of discrimination from the wider white Ashkenazic, Ashkenormal Jewish world. There are a few other interesting graphics in here. Here was the survey. 19 people from Michigan were surveyed, 259 from California. The survey, I think, was part of University of California, Berkeley or something. So that's where they conducted the survey. 21% were black, black, 11% Hispanic, 10% Asian, 7% Middle Eastern, Doovid's got a tiny bit of Native American blood. If I fell into this, I guess I'm pretty white, but if I did fall into Jews of color, I would probably be Native Americans. And not too many, only 1% of the Jews of color are part Native American. This also was pretty interesting, like a perception of Jews of color, kind of like a pecking order of what's the highest rank. The best is the people who have the most money, best education, most respected jobs, and they put at 8 generally white Jews, and the average person who answered the survey, who responded, put themselves a little bit lower than white Jews. And so interesting, like in the pecking order, they have like themselves as that responded to the survey as almost on par with white Jews, as opposed to, I guess, your average Jew of color, who would be like 6 or as opposed to people rank themselves higher than your average person. So ranking themselves, they put themselves like an 8, on par with your average white Jew, and as where the average Jew of color would be a 6, as opposed to the average non-Jew who has the racial identity is a 3.5. And so a little bit interesting there. So like if you're a black Jew and if you're like a 6 compared to a white Jew who's an 8, and your average black is like a 3.5. And this was the perception of the Jews of color in the survey. But that was kind of interesting. Here's the background. Most Jews of color are from intermarriage, and most Jews of color actually come from intermarriage from an Ashkenazic Jewish parent. That their Judaism comes from an Ashkenazic Jewish parent who married a non-Jewish person, was black or of a mixed race, like Doovid's a half Jew, and so if I would be included, as being part Native American, that that would be through intermarriage. My mother's basically 99.4% Ashkenazic Jew and married a non-Jew, and so most Jews of color, say 42%, the plurality, not most, were part Ashkenazic Jew, and then there's a little bit more information. So it's an interesting survey, and see, week in review, we've had so to say quite a few Jews of color. We had Babs, who's a part Iraqi Jew, Judas from California, who's a Persian Jew, half Iranian, half Jew from his mother's a Persian Jew, his father's a Persian Goy. Samish Ben Said, who is a Algerian Jew. Week in Review has had Dishan, who is I think his mother's a Cuban Jew, and maybe his father's just straight African American. His mother's a Cuban Jew. Relatively, Week in Review, Doovid has a little with Jews of color, so that new survey is interesting. It's kind of been in all the Jewish publications this week. So with that, I'm happy to talk about any of these issues. You want to talk about the Claire debate? You want to talk about wonder crabs, or you want to talk more about the Socratic method and power asymmetries, or you want to review your map stream, or
that's a lot of words. There's this meme that some people were talking about. Oh yeah, you mentioned with the electrons being, when was it, conscious?
There's just a Leo Phyllis video that I shared. And one last thing is Tinkle Tank had mentioned this book on the user illusion, cutting consciousness down to size. I'm not sure if it's some sort of Nordic author, but I did get the book, and I'm halfway through it. So it's pretty interesting. I didn't share that there was a new Daniel Dennett video, and I guess his consciousness as an illusion is somewhat like the user illusion. So I'm reading that book about that was a consciousness is an illusion, and so I guess Tinkle Tank had recommended this book, The User Illusion. I'm halfway through.
Cool.
And I also have been moving into reading some ophthalmology books on just the anatomy of an eye. So I think sense perception relating to consciousness. The main topic of Week in Review really is consciousness, and from the neural correlates or the brain sense perception. Eyesight is 40% of sense perception. They say the brain activity in general is about 40% correlated to eyesight. So I got almost like 5 books from ophthalmology. I pounded through the first one in just anatomy of ophthalmology, and I remember hearing. I don't think it was the Holocaust. I think it was actually like maybe Aiken would know. Maybe it was like Vietnam or something like that, where if you were captured as a prisoner of war, and if you were a doctor, they would use your service immediately. So people would lie and say that they're a doctor if you're a prisoner of war, and that they would ask the people I think there's 5 levels of the 5 layers of the eye or the cornea, and so if you're really a doctor, they'd ask them if you knew the 5 layers of the cornea, and I don't even know if that's accurate, but just the anatomy of an eye is pretty intense, and for ophthalmology, just doctors who take care of sickness versus my more interest is in consciousness and perception. But I'm going to try to put a deep study in over the next few weeks into ophthalmology, not necessarily to be like an eye doctor or worry about the common ailments that people have with their eyes and how they're cured, but more related. I didn't find really that many good books related to consciousness and eyesight and the brain and neurology. So I got more straight ophthalmology, anatomy books that would be used by medical students or people looking to be an ophthalmologist, optometrist.
Someone in the chat was asking before about whether God was hairy. Not really. Does this look like hair to you? Looks like a bunch of grapes to me. It's not the best image because normally what was displaying as black would be green, but I'm sure you can find the image somewhere. Anyway, I'm gonna have to
We got right reaction. I'm not sure if you want to bring him on. That's fine.
Also,
if you want to ramble or
he says some golly gosh darn atrocious things, and I really just wanted an apology for the death threats and the endorsing people to burn me at the stake while I take my precious time to come on and elucidate people on his bonehead stream.
I used to tell the president of the Hare Krishna temple in Detroit that like as a Jew, it's my I'm obligated to honor wealthy people, and there actually is statements in that straight Kibbutz as Usher is a dicta that says honor a wealthy man, and it's straight up Jewish law to honor rich people. But yeah, I have a more tendency to right reaction has a larger platform. When he streams, he gets 50 to 100 live viewers, and he's a man of means and relatively educated. So generally, even though I don't necessarily disagree with Jennifer's complaint, but I have a tendency to honor wealthy people. So Jennifer does not have that tendency, and that's why I was mentioning. If Jennifer wanted my honor, that becoming wealthy would be more likely a path to me honoring her than actually demonstrating that she's this great scientist or that any of these other conjectures are true. But so I wouldn't mind letting but Week in Review is Jennifer's platform, so her call.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
I say if you want to have him on, that's fine. If you don't have to.
Well, if he wants to say, I'm sorry, and I won't let my disgusting minions say that they want to burn you at the stake.
So
I'm not crazy about being timed out in the chat either. Yeah, if he's gonna, he put himself
he's welcome to come on, but he has to apologize and he has to make some sort of affirmative statement that he's going to try to get his minions in line towards not, like doing negative things towards you.
I don't ask for much, and I have to set an example, for stuff. So there you go.
His streams are actually, I saw the other day.
There's nothing that gets said in those streams. It's so tedious. I feel dumber listening to them. It's like, okay, this is the recipe for success. I'm looking at the number of viewers. I'm thinking, okay, I got to do something to just get a bunch of people and then bait and switch just spoon feed some knowledge in there. And I was thinking, okay, so how does this, guy do it?
His presentations are relatively good. Like
I just need to get a distorter for my voice and learn how to laugh maniacally. How's that?
I mentioned because we talked the last few weeks about laughter as a sign of bad character, and because the power outage, and I was showing the the little generator I bought, and working in construction, and if you're more of like guns or weapons, but even just construction equipment, there's protocol, and it's dangerous. And you have to follow general safety. You don't, but it's saying like if you're like you come to the job site and there's a whole bunch of power equipment, and that people don't follow safety protocol, or you can seriously hurt yourself or other people with the equipment, that it would be a scenario where it'd be like no laughing, and it's saying like no, like I'm not going to let you use my expensive equipment unless you wipe that stupid smile off your face, unless you stop laughing, because I think if you're laughing, you're not going to be serious enough to use the equipment. And certainly like weapons or something like that, if you were like going to like the gun range, or teaching someone how to use swords or something like that, and they're laughing, you're like, oh, it's funny, like I'm going to give the guy a gun, and then he's going to be like, oh, that's funny, I'm going to hold it to your head and pretend like I'm going to kill you. And he's like, no, there's no laughing at the gun range, there's no jokes at the gun range.
You know what happened to me when I went to the gun range?
Smile off your face, you're not going to get to use the gun. And so I thought that was apropos to what I was saying. And certainly weapons and gun range, but generally expensive equipment in general. Like, no, I'm not going to let you touch my expensive equipment if you're telling jokes, because if you're telling jokes, I think you're going to break my shit.
When I went to the gun range, I fainted. Such a delicate flower. Yeah.
It was your laughter. It's saying
I was not laughing. I was very serious. I just fainted.
It'd be an example where you're saying like you can't trust someone who laughs. And if you're at the gun range and like you're about to hand the person a gun for the first time, and they're laughing, they're telling jokes, and the person was like, "No gun for you until you stop joking around." And in my professor, you say like talking about construction workers, and it's like, stop goofing off, and people get injured, and so it is somewhat like common. So I was bringing that somewhat as a heuristic proof that laughter is a sign of bad character, and that anybody in a practical circumstance is like, can I borrow your car? And the guy's cracking jokes, saying like, no, you can't borrow my car, as the person who's like very serious. And so if it was like expensive equipment, and especially dangerous equipment, and safety, and like safety protocol, it's saying like it did rock climbing as part of the Olympics, and so like rock climbing, you need a guy at the bottom holding the rope, or anything that has safety protocol, and saying, I'm trusting that you're going to follow the safety protocol, and when I'm on top, I don't want you cracking some stupid joke about like, wouldn't it be funny if I dropped you? And so it's the point like that you think if the guy's cracking a joke, that like maybe he's going to think it's funny if he drops you, and therefore you can't trust him with your safety if he if he's cracking jokes or laughing. And so I just think
every single person I know laughs. That's sort of the thing, a lot, and we enjoy laughing together. So it's kind of like, this is really bizarre.
When you worked in the equipment, I mean, I don't know if you work with like expensive equipment.
I sure do, and then trusted by a lot of people for a lot of things you wouldn't normally trust people for. But it's okay. I understand.
People tell jokes near the equipment.
Yeah, sure.
Or saying like, no, it's serious time. It's expensive equipment.
Yeah,
Are
Peter
you saying,
always cracked jokes
are you
because
saying that the
when you
equipment
work
wasn't
for the cops,
didn't have safety
it was fucking
protocol?
expensive equipment for sure. It didn't really have safety protocol, but it was
It
very
wasn't like
expensive.
construction where someone could have got injured if the person didn't follow the proper protocol. It was just expensive.
Yeah,
It wasn't even like if you messed up, you could have broke it. It was just
pretty much.
expensive equipment. So maybe the laughter was saying if it was expensive equipment, if the guy's messing around, could have broke it and cost a whole bunch of money, and especially something that involves safety, like construction.
There was nonstop
or
chuckling
weapons.
going on. It was like, I don't want to say it's a police station, but it was like the federal version of a police station.
Government
There was
corruption.
chuckling
So
going
just
on.
a bunch of people, getting overpaid by government bureaucracy, laughing at other people suffering.
No.
These people killed each other, and we're doing the sound technician, and it's so funny because I don't give a care.
It's just
I don't
really
give a crap
hard.
that people are dying, and there's all this crime. I just laughing and cracking jokes while other people are dying.
It's just really hard work and requires a tremendous amount of focus, and there are bad vibes that happen and become impossible to face. And then there's like these grudge matches, these, I don't want to say political, but yeah, interpersonal drama grudge match things. So yeah, being able to put a positive spin on it brings morale up. And I was part of the employee engagement committee. So
Okay,
how
but
people are
it's just
feeling at
expensive
work
equipment, but it
matters a
wasn't
lot to
fragile
me.
equipment that could have been damaged, and it
Yeah, it
wasn't.
could have been
it-
damaged, and I literally was the one who probably took, I don't want to say best care of the equipment, but really friggin' good care of the equipment. Like I'm the only one who dusted out of the entire people that worked there. And I was a Chuckley McChucklerson. I was the joke central. Because it's hard to work. It's like working in a cave. Like for years I thought I worked in the basement, even though I never even went downstairs. It was that dank. I was like, yeah, I work in the basement. And then I thought about it later. I'm like, no, I don't. Holy shit. Yeah. Yeah. Laughter helps people remain like to get work done, you have to be in a flow state. And if you're
I was
like you fucking work in a fucking cave for 8 hours and tell me if you like a joke or two. Until then, we'll see.
When my power was out, I had my cell phone and it was suggesting videos. And one of the videos was one of your early videos of the slit experiment where you have like the little white pad. And I saw like I played it for the first few seconds, and you're like, "Hi, I'm Jen Sheriff." So I just like the first second I noticed that you introduced yourself,
Oh my
and
God.
just when you like said your name, you started laughing.
I just get super joyful. I wish you didn't take it personally.
Because I connect laughter with bad character or danger assessment that you can't trust your safety with the other person connected to laughter. So it does have a negative connotation to me.
Probably for the vast majority, it's the right call. I can be serious. Like if we
we're
were
in a
doing a
serious
stream,
situation,
let's say we were chilling IRL and you were like, and it was just you and me, I would just never laugh out of respect to you. But because we're doing a show, if I never laugh, then it's like setting a bad example. Like I'm trying to set a good example for the show. But if it was just us, I could keep the chuckles. I could not laugh.
My dad has a lot of nice, like, he's got a lot of equipment and like he's got rules for everything. So like, okay, you come in, you gotta take the shoes off, and like, like, okay, like,
sounds like we would get along famously.
When I say I used my parents' endless pool or something like that, and like everything, you have to work in a certain way, and you just want to know like this is how you use it, this is how you're gonna do it, and no real excuses. And I mentioned to my dad like till today, every time I leave, I was always like, stay safe, be careful, don't get in an accident. And every time I borrow something, like it's always like I want it back in the same condition. And anytime like I use something of his or borrow something of his, he's going to give me the protocol of how it's supposed to be used. And he's saying like if I laughed, the answer is going to be no. Saying like no, like you could use this, but you got to do it exactly the way I told you, no exception. And like laughter would be seen as a way, just forget it. No, like I don't trust you anymore. Like I want some insurance that you're going to do it exactly the way I told you. And laughter would be a sign that like no, you can't be trusted. I think it's a reasonable heuristic. It may not be accurate in all cases.
I
Like
do
if you want to
not agree with you at all.
but say like yes, like if you're coming into a like a tech person's house and they have a bunch of machinery like Aiken or something, and he takes you to his lair in his office, and you're looking at the equipment, and he says, you touch the, do this or do that, and don't do that, and he's saying like, I need your assurance that if you use the equipment, you're going to do it exactly the way I told you, no exception. And humor would be seen as saying like, like, no, I can't trust you. Using something equipment that's dangerous, or something that could injure the other person or themselves, and saying this is how you use the equipment. You got to do it like this because it's dangerous if you don't. And so laughter, like so, just that common circumstances of like someone in technical fields, someone who's worked in construction, and I've seen a lot of injuries, and it's dumbasses. It's usually people who are fooling around and goofing off, and it's like, why the hell are you goofing off with that equipment? It's not a toy. And so it's the type person who's laughing that would use construction equipment as a toy. And saying because you're laughing, you're probably going to use the construction equipment as a toy, and you're probably going to injure yourself or someone else. So I'm just going to take this clue that you're laughing as a sign that you can't be trusted with the construction equipment.
Got it. Are we going to play clips from my streams, or what do you think?
Yeah, if you want. So I just wanted to mention, because we've been talking about that, and I thought maybe the example of in America, probably a better example is guns, because like people use construction equipment or electronics or expensive equipment, but like most people are probably more familiar with guns, and so that'd be like, well, how much laughter is there at the gun range? Or it's like if you're about to, show. So I just thought I kind of bring that as a loose proof. So whatever direction you want to take. Did you want to talk about Claire's debate first before we go into your stream reviews?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think it was great. I didn't think that it was a particularly good exchange, but it was a good warm up for what it was. She's not improving at all, debate on debate. She's sort of getting worse. And someone said she sounded like she was on Ativan, and stuff like that sort of goes over my head. It's not on my radar usually, but upon listening a little closer, maybe that is true. So, not really sure. There's no way she won that.
Yeah, I'd say I thought it was about even. I mean, he had pinned her down. If he had like, I thought she got the upper end where he was like going on and on about like teen sex and like like kids are gonna have sex, you can't stop them, and maybe, I don't really, God forbid, like say she exposed him as a pervert or something, but even to that level, but like he was more thoroughly researched and thought out, and they're arguing about verses in the Quran. Maybe that was about even. He had more research and direct, like what is a theocracy, as where she didn't really have a well formulated view, and then he pinned her down like you're talking about Clarism. I mean, she made a few interesting points, like you need clear defined rules, and if the rules aren't clear and defined, things fall apart. But then her claim about secular chronism, is that really well defined? And then kind of pinned her down about you just mean Clarism, you mean your interpretation. And so she could have argued that better. Yeah, I agree. I messaged her. She told me about it, and I told her she's got to flow it, and she didn't seem too willing to avow herself to the process. That allows her to improve, which is largely flowing the debate, and it's kind of like keeping notation in chess or something, where it becomes obvious the bad moves you made and where to improve on. So flowing the debate is really integral to improvement. But then the argument about sexual liberation, and maybe it's related to like what's happening in Afghanistan. That doesn't really behoove them, but her arguments were relatively coherent. She seems like a
Just hang on a
reasonable.
second. It sounds like the stream is having trouble. People are saying that it's buffering.
Yeah, I saw this buffering. I just restarted, but I think it's probably on your end.
Is it going? I just want to make sure if I have to restart it because it looks like there's hardly anybody watching. Which tells me there's probably something wrong with it. But from what I can tell, it says that it's live.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I mean, it buffered for a while. Maybe people tuned out. We'll see if. Yeah, I don't think Claire performed that badly, and she had a few points where I thought she had the upper hand.
No, I agree with you. I'm just thinking, like, I'm looking at it as a journey of personal improvement. So, like, has Claire improved relative to how she did before? Answer, I'd say she's doing worse. Someone took the wind out of her sails.
Better. I mean, maybe you want her to fail or her side of the argument to fail, and therefore you have a bias. But I actually think that she performed better. But
well, maybe
I mean, her opening.
Right.
I mean, she's not quite like modern day debate. She's not quite ready to be like modern day debate.
No,
but she's close. And maybe even Jennifer, like it's a question whether she's quite whether even modern day debate wants her as a regular, or her ability to have regular bookings on bigger platforms or shows. That I mean, Claire, she was on this Islamic channel for a formal debate. She needs a little bit more work, but as a interview or to come on and just talk about controversial issues
better,
but
maybe
promote the Quran, even though she's promoting secular Quranism. So I saw that she was on the Islamic channel, and just that she's promoting the Quran, even if she has some sort of like crazy heretical version of it. And I think that guy Imran on the Muslim channel like pointed that out, where he's like, well, you do think that the Quran is such an exceptional book that it should provide the foundation for the legal system of the world, even if she has some sort of heretical view of it. And that was my take on it, that Claire is to some extent promoting Islam and Sharia law, and indicative of kind of a group strategy in the West, that what does it mean to be like a secular Muslim, and so it's very hard to articulate, especially like in a debate format. And I think she held some punches. I think like she really probably could have KO'd James, like in a Westboro Baptist church style, just like God forbid, like call him out as a pervert or something like that. Is like, dude, why are you so caught up with sex? Like why are you so caught up with like liberating these girls? And it's like like the Taliban retook Afghanistan in like 2 weeks, and because like no, they didn't want homosexuality and promiscuity, and the American being there propping up, thinking that they're going to completely change over their society, and say like no, like the Taliban took over, the president fled, the U.S. government's there trying to extract the least, and the Taliban, kind of these ragtag group of Islamicists, are taking over, and the people relatively maybe they don't have a coherent Islamic vision or understanding in a debate, but Islam as a group strategy, even if it is not coherent logically, is winning to a certain extent. And so I think Claire is indicative of that. So he's like, oh, there's logical flaws, but at the same time that she does make a point that Islam, and I think her points about the First Amendment, and people in the West don't realize that a lot of the ideas of even freedom of minorities, freedom of speech, freedom of religious practice are probably derivative of Islam. And if James is trying to take that as a Western value, it probably isn't a Western value. And then he comes out like basically he's defending perversion, that theocracy is bad because I want to try to have sex with young girls, God forbid. So I think like to a certain extent, that she might have, despite everything else that part of the debate that she kind of I don't say like at least questionably put him as a pervert, at least from an Islamicist fundamental perspective, that the debate was about even, but on the like the pure governmental logistic argument, like he was definitely more well prepared, and his arguments were more well thought out, and he was just like all the flaws that he pointed out in her logic. She was just like Clarism, and it will be Quranism under Claire's interpretation because I, and so Jennifer is saying she's getting worse, but God forbid, possibly a lot of those critiques are the same thing that Jennifer is saying about Claire that people think about her.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's basically no difference between Claire and I. If you look at it, really look at it.
I didn't mean that James. If the debater was Mark, so if Mark was the one debating Claire, and
James is the co-host.
Yes, so I meant Mark. In this, I'm not claiming that Mark was a pervert or anything, but I'm just saying the fact that he harped on this like free sex, or like the people are going to have sex and you can't stop them as his like main argument that they seem to talk about, and all like the personal liberties. You're saying like theocracy is going to limit your personal liberties, and the only thing he seemed to focus on was sex. So I thought that caused the debate to be about equal.
Yeah.
But if James wants to hop on and talk about, that's fine with me also. So
James, you free to come say hi. I did a 3-hour restream of the pretty epic "Does God Exist" stream, and then I was thinking I could just like do a review of that, because I didn't even answer the question. I didn't even answer the question that was asked in the comments of my video. It was something about some garbage, and I was like, I want to write a chemistry textbook. If you're not going to write it, I'll just wait around until somebody's like, hey, I feel like writing a chemistry textbook, and I'll just be like, cool, I'll help you out. All right, cool. Thanks, James. Doooovid is right about atheists. Well, who hasn't gone through a period of feeling relatively atheistic? Not to mention, most of these people call themselves skeptics, so. I consider myself a skeptic. I'm supreme skeptic, if you think about it. I'm always the one willing to actually someone. The most, conventional of presuppositions, right? See it right now. Can't wait to go defy some norms. All right, I guess while we wait for Doooovid, we can either see if anybody has any questions in the chat, or I can play a little bit that I have queued up from this stream of just, it's wonderful, this self-referential stuff. I can just have material forever. And then just go fill up the spank bank on the Amy Newman channel, so to speak, every so often, and then just keep on recursing for all time in a wheel of beautiful, ever-expanding teachings to infinity. Oh yeah, I was totally into this thing where it was like, I wrote down as a note to myself, Cran dimensional axiom proving, which is a bit like my other thing of a Krinklow second, which is a made-up term, which I enjoy. And certain people, Claire, do not. So it's like a question of, can you prove axioms? And at first, you can't. It's not that you can't, it's that you don't prove axioms. Axioms prove things. And then whether an axiom can be proved, you can't say that an axiom can't be proved because axioms can't be negative. So there's a crack in the door of reasonability that an axiom could be arguably just undergo something that could be described as proven, but it would be intercontextual, which is why I said cran-dimensional axiom proving, like cranberry, but different. And that was that. So I also had my rant. I don't know if that's the best part. Okay, if Dude's not even going to be there, is it worth playing it or not? I don't know. Could somebody help me out here, please? Doovid. Okay. It looks like Doovid's really not coming, but he's not. Looks like things are pretty important there. That's presuppose gravity. We need to know about the nature of stuff to know when we can presuppose what, because sometimes, the Earth is okay. Hey, Doovid, how long are you gonna be? I already had to go to a thing. Doovid, is he gonna write something on the? Ooh. Let's see what he's saying. I hope he sends the message in the play a clip. Oh, okay. Sounds good. It doesn't actually always make sense to presuppose gravity in calculations because Earth is energetically flat. Conditionally consequent. This is what I got into with Monsieur Tejump when I decided to just hop on into the mud sort of preemptively or whatever. If consciousness is defined as waveform reduction, then pantheism implies panpsychism, or just general knowing about how the universe works without religion. Implies that it is panpsychic. So just really definitional. Tertiary, when we have something so very much more down the line, causally, like obviously, we were all in God's navel one back in the day or whatever, like, but it doesn't really matter because so much has happened. Like think of the system that represents what you are now as like something that's got inertia and other attributes familiar from physics. It's like, how much inertia does it have from when it was created? Well, that was like for more than 4 billion years ago, right? So it's like, we still have that residual inertia? Well, yeah, in a way we do, because the monad hasn't changed since then. The thing that causes the ongoing change, the unmoved mover, thing that doesn't change but which causes change, just keep saying it until it makes sense, okay? That's the same as it ever was, right? So there's a proportionality. It's not self-evident at all. But you're never going to get your own consciousness. We're never going to speak proton type deal. We can't embody the language of the universe that way because there's just too many steps. Like because we became what we are over so long that to try to like tell a single story with it would appear to be impossible. So we have to just say, whatever, I'm sort of just throwing in the towel in terms of disentangling certain things. It's always good to leave the door open to future disentanglement. But there's a certain art, I suppose, to knowing where it makes sense to stop for a while. Key metaphors: climbing a mountain, right? So the challenges when you're at different altitudes are different. Gotta take breaks. Gotta pace yourself is the ultimate thing, because ultimately you just never want to stop, which involves being in the super chilled vibe at all times. All right, I wanted to pull up. Okay, wait. Here we go. I got my other thing here. Perfect. Because really, what are we talking about is grounding being, which is, what the heck is grounding being? What does that mean? Well, what is the most fundamental sort of attribute of what it is that makes the thing a thing? Can't ground being back to what I was saying. Sorry, I don't want to go off the path too much. I did have a point with my tertiary derivative. You just need to re-axiomatize. axiomatizing in a subjective manner. So the way that, for example, people like Plato, peace be upon him, would have understood things like that. These are re-axiomatized, if you will, as more transcendentals. Even though they obviously, weren't discovered until we arose, blah, 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 blah. We just say, well, they're monadic because whatever it is that's converged to what we are now has this unmoved mover. But we're so complex that we need more than one unmoved mover to model us completely. That's where we get these chunker things. Now, obviously, we don't have to go this far if I'm just caring about doing physics, which is really ultimately that's the most important thing, which is ironic that it never ever actually gets talked about. But anyway, I wouldn't need to go too far into some of these things, but just to finish up, I was thinking about this, about whether all proofs are deductive, deductions rather. Sort of I would say dog ear that one for a while, because we have to sort of incorporate the measurement limit into. So there's a certain finality about the measurement limit with regards to computables. So how many independent observables, aka computables, exist per system? That's a fixed thing. Yay! We have a high limit. Upper bound. Additional information, which with which we can constrain any system. We understand the parameters, eigenstates, what have you, sufficiently well. So this comes to the last step. So what I want to get at is that most things you have to start thinking about them in a deductive way, and then eventually have some seemingly abductive step, but not quite. And bottom up versus top down axioms are, I just think humans are sort of built for top down axioms now that I think about it. So when we listen to some of these people, I think they're a lot smarter than maybe they seem, because they're sort of stumbling over their words to say stuff that just doesn't make sense. And hate to quote Claire, but you can't explain nonsense, and you certainly can't learn it. And that's why I dropped out of Gen Rel in university. I took one class. I was like, this is gibberish. I'm not doing this. I won't say all the classes I did that in, but there was definitely moments of being like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Definitely. And I can prove it. So it's this isn't good for either of us. That was a side rant. Sorry. Back to the topic. Axioms have two possible orientations. Okay. So back to my original point, probably want to use top down no matter what. But that's been inverted in the modern day, that only bottom up works. So these particle things, that's an example of a bottom up axiom. Top down is more about the nature of how many, it's grounding being, which people don't know exactly what that is, but what's the most fundamental attribute about a thing? Well, what is, according to entropism, what is the most fundamental attribute of a thing? Probably, nobody knows the answer or whatever, but it's a sphere. That's it. And what does a sphere do? Well, it orients everything as a locus. It orients a boundary as a locus from a point. So that's the grounding of being, is orientation of boundary with respect to a point, a locus, which is a set of points, quote unquote. But really, you could think of it, I suppose, as a band or a loop, or it's the act of inscribing something inside a thing. So maybe Russian dolls. I literally cannot visualize this stuff in 3 dimensions. Maybe some people can. If you can, it's a Russian doll. It's just one. But if you can't, it's just a circle. I never never got to my point here. Here's the argument. Let's try to break it down a little bit. We have a 2-layer problem, metaphysical and physical. Cue the screeching. So, metaphysical, physical. Seem to remember a metaphor about a crappy metaphor about landing a plane somehow. Last time, but seriously, periodic table, periodic table, periodic table, periodic table. Nobody got that right. It's just been ardent heptupling down in 2 dimensions. Not even acknowledging that 118 is it. That is it. It. There we go. See? I got that in the T-Jump server. Yo, wrap that shit up, B. And then there's this one too. I made that one myself. So. Okay, so periodic table is not everything that exists in terms of knowledge. It's a pretty far cry from it all. So, what exactly does that mean if we can't even get the most obvious thing right? We miss, what is that, 33.3% of it? It's not integral. The quantum periodic table is integral. The 2D one is, well, 2-dimensional, you know? No one's going to argue, apart from one group that I won't mention, is going to argue 2D over 3D. So it's one of those which you might call transcendent, divine, self-evident truths. Then in retrospect, it's like unfathomable. How could I not have known that the periodic table was 3D? Well, because it's not the same thing to recognize a pattern as to discover the pattern. And so that's just one chunker. The periodic table is a space-temporal chunker. Arguably has more information, more readily accessible types of information than other chunkers, but the point of a chunker is to have a proxy to the monad. What is the unmoved mover, aka what are the equations of motion? But we don't want to think of motion in a classical sense. It's more equations of change, because fundamentally systems are alternating quantum states, which has no way to be represented as a continuous function. That's sort of something I have to unfortunately keep harping on when people are trying to get an understanding of quantum. It's like, if you don't go in the right order and have the grounding of the metaphysics, not to sound like Darth Dawkins, but he's right, at least superficially. And then on and on. Because the metaphysics is kind of like a cauldron with a multi-layer something inside of it that can create arguments when you shoot it. We got into peer. Where the hell is Doooovid? I hope everything's okay. If anyone else wants to come on and okay, I see him right there. He's standing around the computer. I don't know if he can hear me or not. Doooovid, are you coming back soon, or should I keep playing the thing? All right, there he is. Let's see. Doooovid, is everything okay?
Yeah, I was just talking to Deshaun, and I missed this call earlier, so hope your ramble went well. I was listening somewhat, but
Not particularly. I wasn't ready for it. I was ready for the back and forth, you carrying most of it bit that we always do. But I tried to sort of fumble my way back to cogency. I did have something I said about self-orientation, which I thought was really good that I hadn't gotten to yet. And then whether peers exist, we got into that like massive clusterfuck of an argument. If we're gonna have dumpster fire arguments, I don't know. I guess I might as well be the one picking the subject. So, whether peers exist was the one I chose to fan the flames of.
yeah, I saw your you're saying the peer review. I think like what I mentioned last week, power asymmetries are real, and the Socratic method as a method towards achieving power and recognition of the power asymmetry and entering power and having to go through that process of initiation process through the Socratic method, which is the point to break you down and make sure that you're going to be loyal and submit to the rules, kind of like talking like the no laughing. Like there's rules here. If you follow the rules, eventually you're going to get to use our cool, expensive equipment, and you're going to, get your own weapons and your own privileges. But you have to be broken down to submission, to that you could be trusted on the inside of power, and so that is kind of the purpose of the Socratic method. And so obviously, it's kind of negative, and there's reason to push back at it. But then you say the reality that high birth, low birth is a reality, and just saying like, yeah, there's a guy at City Hall with a gun, and he's not there to defend you. He's there to defend people who took high birth. And you could talk about karma and say karma is reality, and there's overall general rules of right and wrong and ethics and morality and some sort of greater karmatic system, that even if the legal system is corrupt, that something causes action reaction to balance itself out in some sort of fairness. But like, no, I mean, the world is generally not fair, and the most obvious case of not fairness is high birth and low birth. And so you have to go through the Socratic method because you took low birth. And so like you're upset largely that you took low birth, and you have to go through the Socratic method, and it's not fair because you're only being punished for taking low birth, so to say.
I
And
wouldn't
they say,
word
well,
it like that, but cool.
well,
But yeah, I'd rather just meta-analyze the Socratic method itself as an Inquisition technique, not meta-analyze my own personal shortcomings. I give
well,
people the
you're saying
benefit
is
of the
that
doubt.
you took low birth, so to say, isn't really a shortcoming. That's why it's so upsetting. And saying, okay, I'm not saying like anything wrong with your parents, or just saying like you weren't born into the halls of power, and you want in, you have to go through some sort of initiation process. And so the Socratic method is like this, can we trust her, can to let her in, and and to put it straightforward, like the low birth aspect, it puts it straight at you and saying like, like just just the facts. How much money is here in your bank account? And so you don't have to answer that question, but if the answer is not something high, just say, okay, like, no, it's nothing worth mentioning. You don't have a bunch of money. And the question of power or any of these type things like that, the high birth and low birth is factual. And the complaint on the Socratic method is really a complaint on taking low birth. And that's, most people have that complaint because, it's like Bernie Sanders and the 1%.
I use the fucking Socratic method all the time. I'm probably the best Socratic dialoguer in the world. I was so good at it on a recent stream that someone's like, "Oh, you can't ask questions like that because it's like you're trying to proselytize for a religion." It's like, hello, I'm trying to get you to follow a train of argumentation. I don't give a shit. I don't even want these plebs having anything to do with what I believe. Make me look
When
bad.
you're talking about if you want to say the Socratic method is good in its pure form and it's been corrupted. That the
It's
Socratic
awesome
method,
for what it applies to. It's awesome for what it doesn't apply to. It can be It can be like neutral to mediocre to terrible, depending on where the mismatch is. But where it fits, it fits. Oh, great! Yeah, sure.
well, I mean, because it's been corrupted
It's a
as an
side link.
initiation process to obtain power. And if you're like, as a woman, you're saying basically, you're like, okay, the man or the person is like, I have power, I have what you want, and really, I don't care what you think. Like, you got to have sex with the guy in order to enter the halls of power. And saying that's just the way it is. I have the power, I have the institute that you want in on, and I don't really care how smart you are. I want to use my power and abuse it to, try to, have illicit sexual relations or something like that. So you have the abuse of the Socratic method as opposed to the pure form, which is intellectual. And so, so that's why I'm saying that, whether you're right, whether you're smart, whether you understand things better or not, is different than do you have power, do you have money, do you have something to offer the person other than some supposed understanding, thinking better. And so, the Socratic method, in its current form, is usually used as an initiation rite to enter power. And so that's where the low birth comes in, where you're saying, like, no, you can't really grant somebody power. You say, okay, I'm going to teach you better. You're going to be smarter. You're going to understand these issues better. But you're like, well, what do I get? Do I get a certificate? Do I get, a check? Do I get, some sort of job? You're saying, like, yeah, no, don't worry. Like, you'll be a better person. Things are going to work out good for you. But I can't promise you those things. And so it's the perversion of the Socratic method, is that your average person isn't going to go to you for self-improvement. They're going to go to somebody that has demonstrated power, that could demonstrate the benefit of taking initiation from them, because it appears that if they take initiation from them, like Harvard or an institute, or even JF, or if JF is abusing his power to have sex with females, and it's saying, like, as opposed to but you could see the light at the end of the tunnel. You see, like, okay, this guy's kind of a perv, and he's probably going to just try to have sex with me, but like, he does have a big
He had
channel.
his errant wife, or to be girlfriend, back. He took her back. That's somewhat gallant.
Well, as he said himself, he's just attempt to just keep sleeping through the fan base. And
I
saying that's
don't know
typical.
if I would quote him saying that.
He did say that. I mean, maybe he changed his mind, but he said that, a few years ago, that he was just going to keep on sleeping through the fan base.
Well, that just sounds like someone who's been hurt. I can have sex with anybody. It just seems like
that's the typical, God forbid, degeneracy of the West. That to enter power, you basically have to sleep your way up the ladder, and the people with power, they're just like, they're not really going to care what you're going to say. You got to have sex with them, and then they're going to give you some sort of benefit for doing that. Then you're going to get some sort of post, some sort, like the God forbid, the Weinstein casting couch, where it's like, you know what you got to do to get the part. Like, it doesn't matter how good of an actress you are. You know what you got to do to get the part. You don't want to do it, you're not going to get the part. I don't care how good of an audition you do.
Afraid of don't they have like a fraying of their
Well, I mean, it's even like
joy
Governor
juice,
Cuomo.
but what's the thing?
All the stuff
it's not
coming out on
adrenaline, but what's the other psychotropic? It's not adrenaline, it's the other one that makes you feel good.
Endorphin.
Yeah, they're burned the fuck out of not just endorphins, but what's the other one? But they have they're just burned out on thrills, so they need a new thrill. So,
Well, and so it's the when you get to Hollywood and you're a young actress, and you're
having sex with one more woman going to be a real thrill? I wanted to say something real quick about the Socratic method. I wanted to make it very clear that I have a nuanced opinion. You know the word pill pull, how it's kind of onomatopoeic?
pill pull means pepper.
Like, But it sort of
But
sounds like you're kind of kneading dough almost. Sounds like you're sort of like disentangling, combing through various sides of dough, the word. I don't know. Whatever. I feel like there's two sides to it, at least, like a delicate dance, where you have to know when to advance in a certain direction and when to come back in another, and it's all just, magic. I feel like the Socratic in what I do, which isn't helpful, but to analogize it as that, like the Socratic method would be just one of the various facets of the total process that I would invoke under very particular circumstances. Like it does, that's the thing, like there's a benefit to putting people on the defensive. I should know. People are always trying to get me on the defensive, not necessarily intentionally, but definitely coming at
that's
me.
That's the high birth, low birth. If you took low birth, you're automatically on the defensive due to material status.
Uh-huh.
And it's a relative. The power differential creates defensive. So when you get to the institute and you're looking inside, you're looking for a position as opposed to the person on the inside who has a position, you're automatically on the defensive. So you want to call it abuse of the Socratic method. That Governor Cuomo and the Weinstein casting couch is an abuse of the Socratic method, and the majority of the Socratic method is the Weinstein casting couch, as opposed to the pure philosophical form. And you would say, really, the truth was available all the time. That did you want the truth? And it's like, no, you didn't want the truth. You wanted fame and riches, and therefore you ended up on the Weinstein casting couch. And if you wanted truth, you would have ended up talking to Church of Entropy or Doovid. But Doovid and Church of Entropy can't provide you with wealth and fame, and therefore you ended up talking to Weinstein because you wanted what he could offer you, truth, truth, and wealth and fame, and therefore, God forbid, karma is karma. That you knew what you were getting involved with, and you made your bad decision, and you're suffering the karma of your bad decision. Like it was probably a really bad idea to go to a meeting with Weinstein in his room for some casting call. You knew what he was going to do, or even say God forbid, Governor Cuomo and all this rehashing of say, but and also I told Luke about the authentic Judaism. This is Torah. This is its reward. And saying, well, you knew what you were going to get with what Doovid was going to teach you, is that people were going to turn against you, and you're probably going to be martyred. But that's the price of the truth. You want the truth, and so that's why theologically in the Vedas or the Kabbalah, it focuses on this issue of high and low birth, and so accepting the karma of the situation of your position of birth as a lesson of the negativity of the soul taking birth in the first place. That you enter the world, and the world is largely rigged against us. And there's these power structures, and the power structures are made to perpetuate themselves, and they will use you up and spit you out and take advantage of you, and leave you in a nameless grave with no thanks. But that's the nature of the material realm. That's what you should expect.
Okay, Gnostic. Someone whose name I can't read is asking, like, honestly, could you at least tell me how to pronounce that? Clercus. So the argument is that no such thing as innocence. Is that the argument, Doovid? I didn't surmise that. There's no such, well, oh, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, because you're
taking. Okay, I got it.
Probably saying if you look from a Gnostic view, like you're guilty in that you took birth in the first place, and that this is already hell, this is already punishment. So there's already power structures that are against you.
Isn't that basically what Hinduism already? Definitely Buddhism thinks that.
Yeah, I mean, so it's Vedic in general. The like I said, the Father Ukart and the pessimism of pantheism. That
Not pessimistic. It's all the other all the other religions are fatalistic. Pantheism's the only non-fatalistic religion.
well, he calls it the pessimism of pantheism, but
Well, that seems like that on the surface, but that's because people have huge egos and they're terrified of those egos being subverted.
no, because they're I mean, generally, at least the Abrahamic traditions have a messianic idea, or in the West, like a striving towards utopia or something better. In the Vedic pantheistic systems, they're just cycles, and there really is no improvement. There is no way to make, there is no Tikkun Olam making the world a better place. There's the factual, harsh conditions in the material realm that don't change.
Sure, there's ways to make the world a better place. You improve yourself, and then people around you are uplifted by your self-improvement.
No,
It's
I mean that's
real.
not what the Vedas say. I'm saying death sets you free. Saying
No,
that,
that's
like,
not what the
in
Vedas
essence,
say,
like
dude.
you say, like, no, I'm saying there is no salvation in the material realm. Only death will set the soul free and allow it to return back to Godhead.
Citation needed.
Yeah, man. If you want, to do quotes of the Vedic understanding, but I'm saying generally, the Vedic ritual, the Vedic understanding is more harsh than the Christian messianic moving towards utopia, and even saying that the purpose of creation, of the Abrahamic traditions, the purpose of creation is man, and that the whole purpose of the world and everything in it is for man. And the later Kabbalistic interpretation is that God basically created the world in order to bestow some sort of special gifts or bounty upon man, and the Vedic system is usually not designed. There is no special role of man, and man in essence has nothing good coming to us.
Enlightenment.
Like to repair the world, but I'm saying enlightenment is death setting us free. That there is no enlightenment. Enlightenment is like the acceptance of suffering. There is no like enlightenment that's going
No,
to
it's
create a
the end of
utopian society.
suffering. Enlightenment is the end of suffering.
The end of suffering by acceptance of suffering through recognition that you're not this body, and that death will set us free, as opposed to some sort of
No.
repair the world, a
No.
vision that you're going to make the world a better place.
Have I not made the world a better place? Has the
What
periodic table not made people somewhat? I mean, I'm happier now that I know the periodic table's three-dimensional. I have paintings of it all around my house. Woohoo!
Yeah, but if you say knowledge, but I'm saying you probably don't have a pure form of
Probably
Hinduism.
not.
I'm saying the
Oh yeah,
generals,
probably not.
pessimism of pantheism, the pessimism of the Vedic culture.
What a bunch of ragtag gang of atheists want to say about my wonderful. I don't give a shit if we call it pantheism. Call it stantheism. Call it pottheism.
Well, I'm saying
Name change doesn't change anything.
This concept of fairness, which is largely in the West and the Abrahamic traditions, is less so in the Vedic traditions. That you can't expect fairness. The arc of the universe doesn't bend towards fairness. Enlightenment doesn't come from taking down the bad guy. It comes from acceptance of your position, and that's why the Vedas has this larger concept of high and low birth. And so I'm connecting that to the Socratic method, that the power asymmetry implied in the Socratic method, but in the West, the Socratic method is like an initiation rite that has something positive at the end of the tunnel. That even if you took low birth, that if you go through the Socratic method, that you too could enter power through, that it pays to go through the Socratic method. Because even if you took low birth, that through initiation and avowment to the process, that you will be able to reap the reward of it. And like the Vedic or caste type system is saying that no, I mean, there is nothing you could do to improve your lot in the material realm. and the theology behind it, and even saying resurrection of the dead or Messiah, as opposed to basically looking forward to death. And even the Kabbalistic system is saying like, okay, like basically I look forward to death because I'm enlightened and I recognize the true condition of the material realm.
Why would being enlightened make you look forward to death? Being enlightened means
because you accurate
to anything.
It's even the Kabbalistic literature was saying that only a person who looks forward to death has a true vision of the material realm. It's saying there is nothing to look forward to in the material realm. There's something good to look forward to after death. And not saying like a masochistic suffering personality or like a suicide bomber. The enlightenment is saying, because I recognize that I am not my body, that I am my soul, and that the spiritual realm is superior to the material realm, and that what will return me to God and to the Spirit is death and death alone. And so that's the sign of enlightenment, is looking forward to death.
Just to be clear, the body is the 0 point energy of the soul. So how do you contend with that? See, there's the Socratic method, piping up, cracking out.
That the connected was saying that the body is the prison of my soul, and that's why the enlightened person looks forward to death, and not because it's a violation of the ahimsa principle and saying, not going to plan on harming myself or committing suicide. I'm just enlightened to recognizing that I'm not my body and that my soul is trapped in my body, and that all of the pleasures of the material world are really minimal. So if it was like Mark and the Claire debate, saying like heaven is having sex or reproduction, JF or T jump, that all the only thing that motivates them is hot blondes, as opposed to Doovid, who's enlightened, and it's like, no, actually death that I'm looking forward to. And not that I don't have a good life, not that I'm masochistic or anything like that. It's just that that's enlightenment, because I recognize that my true nature is my soul, and that the material realm is the limiting condition, and that like no hot blondes or sex or reproduction or material benefit or any material pleasures is not actually going to do anything for me.
Right. That's why you go ahead and do all those things in a non-attached manner, and that's the best way to enjoy the pleasures of life, is in a non-attached state. Not a reason to deny oneself those pleasures and then get some sort of weird troglodytic fixation on their source.
Well, you talk about renunciation. I'm not even referring to you could be enlightened and just the recognition that death is something to look forward to, not be afraid of. And so, basically that's the sign of enlightenment, is the being relieved of the fear of death.
But being not afraid of death versus longing for death, not the same. Or looking forward to death, not the same.
No, I'm saying it's related, saying that I'm not afraid of death. I look forward to death, but I still live a life. I take care of my body. I plan on living a long, healthy life. Hopefully, if I had a family, taking care and fulfilling my duty. But ultimately, no, I look forward to death. And that, Kabbalistic books put it straight up. That's the sign of enlightenment. And some of the Vedic texts also say that straight up. That's the sign of enlightenment, is looking forward to death. And it's harsh words, and that's why it's the sign of enlightenment, because your average person can't even, like the words are just too harsh to even leave their mouth, or even just the what the hell are you talking? Look forward to death. And that's why it has to be some sort of strong borderline to say this person is enlightened. He actually looks forward to death. And it doesn't mean, okay, well, is he a bad person? Like, oh, because your unenlightened person would be like, this guy should be put in a straitjacket. This guy should be put in prison. What the hell is he talking about? Because enlightenment is rare, and your average person doesn't come across it easily, that they would just assume that the base statement of what it means to be enlightened, that there's something seriously wrong with the person. That 99% of humanity that heard someone say this guy looks forward to death, that would think this guy should be put in a straitjacket or an institute. There's something seriously wrong with him. But the Kabbalistic and Vedic texts say that that's basically the prerequisite towards enlightenment.
Prerequisite.
Wonder Crab back if your email's working this week.
Are you able to send him the link, please? That would help me a tremendous amount because I can, and I was trying, but there's always a chance it's going to make my computer, you know. Did you ever watch Reboot with Bob and Enzo and Dot? You can tell me yes or no. It's fine. Nothing to be ashamed of. We used to watch it with my dad. Is that a yes?
Basically, entertainment, like the entertainment that I did in my youth.
You said you watched Roseanne, so forgive
as a
me.
kid, as a kid. But like no, and then basically I'm renounced. After I became enlightened, like no, I don't listen to entertainment in any form.
Which was
occasionally in the background, saying or Roseanne when I was like a teenager or even younger.
Okay. So having fun once you're enlightened, that's off the table. Doesn't seem like a very fun thing.
But yeah, but having fun is a sign of not being enlightened. I mean, it's purpose that you're enlightened. You recognize that there's purpose to life. There's meaning, and so like, what does it mean even to have fun? And so connection of like having fun is what I mean. That like like laughter is bad character. That they're saying like no, that's like like enlightened people don't laugh. Enlightened people don't have fun.
Ahem. You think a non-enlightened person could have come up with a 3D PT? And if so, why the F word didn't they? Shawing. Did you send the link to Mr. Crab? After I finished university, I went to Costa Rica to try to do little surfing lessons, and I found a little crab in my hotel room.
Even purpose and saying like no, man, enlightened people don't need to keep on reminding people of their accomplishments.
Was that a yes? Did you send him the link?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, awesome. Okay. I got nicknamed the Crabulon. I just thought that would be an interesting anecdote.
And saying like, okay, Socrates here, like know thyself, and the Socratic method, the truth will set you free, but the truth hurts, and go through the Socratic method just for the sake of truth in and of itself of no benefit, and for the harder level of enlightenment, we're saying I care about truth only for the sake of truth, not for the sake of the benefit that I may obtain from knowing the truth, as opposed to the corrupted Socratic method that's mostly seen as the initiation rite into power, is where the person doesn't care about truth. They just, so to say, learn the truth as a method to obtaining power, and some sort of recognition that these people must have the truth because they have power, and they have what I want, and therefore I'm going to avow myself to their system in order to get what they have, which is what I want. And then it goes back to the high and low birth. How is it that there's these other people that have what I want? And it's like, oh, because they took high birth, and therefore they knew about these things from training from their parents, from the people of previous generations who had created or done these things, or were part of the system. And saying if you were part of the system and perpetuating the system, you would have had the responsibility to know that you can't enjoy these things, that the perpetuation of the system necessitates the forbidding of the benefits of the fruits of the system. So it's from the outside, you see the people who took high birth and they don't follow the dictates. They take the forbidden fruit that the system has to offer because they took high birth and you're running the system, and therefore they have the ability to eat the forbidden fruit of the system. The majority of those people do that. And so the people on the outside, they don't really want, so to say, the truth. They want the forbidden fruit. And, so that's the dichotomy, that if you actually took high birth, you would have known that it's forbidden fruit and that it's not going to be good to eat from it. And if you're on the outside, really your main desire is the forbidden fruit, and you avow yourself to the system for the sake of the forbidden fruit. And so the Enlightenment, God forbid, the looking forward to death, is saying that there is no salvation in this material realm. There really is no way to change this material system. That's the fundamental reality of the way the material realm works. And if you take the Gnostic approach, it's like, okay, we're already in hell. That the reason I'm here is because I'm being punished for something I did in some sort of previous realm, that my soul entered my body was in fact a punishment. And there is, the goal is to escape this punishment and, the hell that we're currently in, which is the material realm, as opposed to the unenlightened view is saying, I want to eat of the forbidden fruit. And you could take that as like the basic biblical message of the Garden of Eden, of the fruit of life and the fruit of knowledge between good and bad. But most people basically, it's like T-Jump. His desire is the forbidden fruit. Everything he does is
Hot blondes is forbidden fruit now? Damn.
Well, basically, I'm saying that, because by adding the word hot, I'm assuming he means illicit, forbidden sexual relations.
Mm-hmm.
In atheism, assume that's what he means by that. That his desire is to have forbidden sexual relations.
I hear that. I just think he can't possibly mean that.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's what he means.
Well, I just think maybe he does, but I just think if he got it, he would be like, ugh. Not that much wanting it still.
I mean, pretty likely he would keep on wanting it.
I
think generally people, like the idea of there is diminishing returns, but generally, people keep on gratifying the material desires, and there's always a further level of saying look at George Clooney or Brad Pitt or something like that. Those guys don't, like your average Harvey Weinstein or something. They didn't get tired of the forbidden fruit. Look at Harvey Weinstein. He didn't get tired of it.
The stories about him didn't really give the vibe of forbidden fruit, more like ejaculating into a plant pot after being rejected by a very nervous woman who just really wanted to come to Hollywood to have her dreams come true.
I've never heard the story of someone getting tired of the forbidden fruit. Sometimes there's pain and suffering, and the pain and suffering leading to enlightenment. But no, it doesn't seem too often that people get tired of they finally get the forbidden fruit, and then they get tired of it, and saying no, the world is full of people that God forbid, most people chase desire and fail in achieving their desire. And
right.
So the people that chase desire and achieve their desire, King Solomon straight up, he was saying, if you have 100, you want 200. You have 200, you want 400. So if T-Jump right now is, God forbid, he wants hot blondes, and so he's getting hot brunettes, and he's going to keep at it till he gets hot blondes, or then he's going to get his hot blondes, and he wants 6 foot perfect body hot blondes, and if he gets those, he's going to want man leaves the earth with the majority of his desires unfulfilled. So so if T-Jump right now, the majority, his desires are basically completely fantasies, and he's an incel, that even if he was a player, God forbid, with a different woman every night, I don't think that would all of a sudden he would have the diminishing returns and become enlightened. No, he could probably spend 10 years of his life Wilt Chamberlain or Lemmy or something, whoever, the abominable snowman that actually achieved the desire that every man desires to achieve. I don't think they tired of it once they got it. You have to have the enlightenment. The enlightenment is no, there is nothing in this material realm that interests me, because I've understood the relation of my soul to the body in the material realm, and to say there actually is nothing of value in the material realm. And
except enlightenment.
Yeah, but
a bunch of
enlightenment,
other
saying,
stuff that's enlightenment adjacent.
that's the paradox. You're saying the enlightenment means you look forward to death.
No, it doesn't. It means you have an abiding non-attachment. Krabby, welcome to the show. There is what sounds like a microwave or something.
Oh, yeah, let me fix that. I'm sorry.
See if I can get these videos any better. Noise. There we go.
Nice sushi.
How is that? Is that any better?
I felt like I would need 15 minutes of explanation per 3-minute interval. That's how dense it was, or how dense it wasn't. Ether mechanics, man. We got to invent it.
Well, the Crabcast covers many subjects, many topics. And it is meant to be a little bit sheathed, a little bit Chthonian.
How do you spell that? Is that C-T-H?
C-T-H-O-N-I-A-N.
Is that underground? Coming from underground?
Yeah, underworldly or sort of.
Crazy. That word popped into my head like couple. I don't know how long ago, but not long. I should make a note.
You can go Chthonian or Chthonic. There's a lot of ways to go. Some people just say phonic. A lot of controversy in schools of thought about this word.
We have a request in the chat for you to let your hair down. But I encourage you to do whatever makes you comfortable, because
no, please, I'm a man of the people.
This is not about being a sex symbol. If it happens, whatever. I don't mind.
The Crabcast is well known to be a honeypot. That is the motive. That is the direction of the channel.
What does that mean?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
Oh, there you go, Franny Fran. You got your wish.
This idea of being, I mean, yes, there is the material world, in my opinion, is evil. And in some ways, I look forward to death, not to be an edgelord. But I think that the return to source and the very fact that we are here in this evil world, we are this like light within the contrasting material darkness. We are this like immaterial force in a material world. I think that is a little bit fun. It is a dance. It is beautiful. It doesn't have to be monotone and removed from emotion. Although I will say I am not enlightened. I don't claim to be enlightened. And I didn't know before tonight that Doooovid was enlightened. But I'm fascinated by the state of enlightenment. I think that a lot of people who claim to be enlightened laugh very frequently. Not to just directly contradict, but it does raise some questions.
Yeah, Doovid's definitely not taking a standard orthodox position here. Leela's a well-established precedent, which would presumably involve laughing. So, if anyone's interested, there's the word. It reminds me of the Cthulhu thing, which I didn't know what that was. My friend was into it, and I didn't really. But yeah, it's a good word, isn't it?
Indeed. Lovecraft left us many messages, many codes.
Yeah, I don't like those types of things, like Lost. I don't like mysteries. I'm not one for mysteries. But I can understand the appeal.
I've been accused many times of being obscurantist or esoteric. Sometimes, maybe a little bit too much.
You know, I guess like the Hiri Dainanda, the Jordan Peterson about knowing God. If I really believed in God, I would never sin. And enlightenment, it's something you can't say you're enlightenment. I mean, generally, like Swami, Goswami means the master of the senses, someone who's gained control over their senses, and so laughing would be a demonstration of someone who has not achieved that level, and possibly the fallacy in what you said is that the enlightenment would be the recognition that you can't change the nature of the material realm. There is actually nothing that you could accomplish in this material realm. That if you want to say the goal is to escape it, or this so to say dance doesn't actually exist. That this is the nature of the material realm is still going to be the nature of the material realm no matter what you do.
Do you dance to change your material surroundings or to improve your status?
Well, even the question of the Leela, there's different gurus or different understandings, and what level the Leela has in classical Hindu theology, as we mentioned, that's largely battle, war, and killing. That dharma and duty, and so the enlightened person, like the Jesus principle, accepts suffering on other people's behalf, and saying really the best you could do is to accept your suffering, and if you reach a certain point where you have reached a level where you could have a good life, then the higher level enlightenment is to accept the suffering of other people upon yourself. That you've been able to reduce your own suffering and create a good circumstance for yourself in the material realm, and then so say the sign of enlightenment would be that you would use that not for your own gratification, but to limit the suffering of other people by taking their suffering upon yourself. And like the dutiful person who if it's like the workaholic, like Mary Trump, and talking about Fred Trump, who just like he worked and on his vacations he worked, and even though he built up wealth and power, really all he liked doing was working. And if he wasn't necessarily an altruist who liked helping other people out, he just liked accomplishing. But then at a certain point where you enjoy helping other people out, and then you see that the suffering in the world is insurmountable, and even if you use your full effort towards limiting the suffering of other people, that that would be how you would choose to use your spare time. And even some sort of Masonic view of building up wealth for yourself, that you need to take care of your body and put yourself in a good circumstance, but ultimately it's to reduce suffering of other people. And then you could have a messianic utopian vision that you believe eventually that there'll be a point where there's a world that has no suffering, or that a utopia will be reached, and dedicate yourself largely in totality towards moving society towards that purpose. But then you also be resigned to the possibility that there may be no utopia in the material realm. In the material realm, to a large extent, is a place for suffering. And the hope that there could be a utopia or a material realm that doesn't include suffering, is just that, a hope. And it could be fantasy, and it could be say that better off not even hoping for such unrealistic or even factually false type things. And if you want to talk about the the role of laughter in that, or even in Hinduism, the focus of the Leelas, that saying that say it's frowned upon to focus on the Leelas. You focus on the duty and the task, and focusing on the Leelas is usually a sign of clever people who want to sin and get away with it.
Leela allows you to do more duty because you're in a flow state. You want to minimize inhibitions, which comes from being in a flow state. So really, whatever yields the flow state is the thing you want, whether it's a hearty chuckle or something else.
Doovid, would you say that it is a utilitarian argument that, for instance, like, are you saying that the best way to alleviate suffering is to be removed from, personal joys and carnal pleasures of all kinds?
Well, I say if it's a sign of enlightenment, being, the in touch with your soul, or who you really are. And so a person who is more attached to their body than their soul is a sign of a person who's not in touch with the ultimate reality.
But the soul then is a static and unhumored, like there's no room for emotion within that. I mean, I feel like being in, like Jen mentions, the flow state is the closest you can be to fading into the environment, and even the observer or whatever secondary or tertiary features of consciousness fade away, and you fully like engage into the activity that you're doing. Isn't that the closest that you can get to the soul or divinity? Maybe that's kind of like an ecstaticist view.
I mean, Freud talks about the flow state, and he says he's observed it in other people, although he never personally experienced it himself. And if you define the flow state possibly as an equanimity of soul and body, that you're in flow because you're but probably flow is usually a negative thing. Where a person is in flow, they're actually all body. And so it's like, if like the meditation, Arya Kaplan's Jewish meditation says the first step in meditation is to shut the voice off in your head. My speed reading technique, saying first thing you have to be able to do to speed read is to shut off your sub vocalization. And so if you're in flow state, meaning that you've shut off the voice in your head and you're just purely action without thought, and therefore you're in flow. Or sometimes you mean like expert performance. It was like chess play, but usually it wouldn't be mental. Usually be something material like athleticism, like playing basketball or something, where you're just full body, where you're not thinking, you're just fully in action. And flow would be like where you're making all your shots or something, and presumably the person's not actually cognitively thinking. They've reached some sort of flow where there is no greater cognitive control of the body. The body is just on autopilot, but it's working. So this flow state is controversial, whether it actually exists or not, and if it did exist, whether it's a good or bad thing. And generally, you're saying flow would generally be the lack of cognitive control of the body, and usually be like a bad thing, like some, you call someone the N-word and then they just flip out and resort to violence, or or the revenge thing where someone hits you and you've lost all cognitive function, and the only thing you could do is just full function of your body to seek physical revenge or sexual desire, possibly in the actual act of sexual relations, where the person is in full body mode and lost the cognitive function. And people who talk about Leela, God forbid.
Okie doke. I think there does. You do have to be quite advanced to wield Leela. Yes, I'll grant you that. So there's a certain attribute that the flow state and spaced out state share, which is diffuse. Diffuse is good because, remember, why do we need to sleep? So that we don't electrocute the brain. Well, if we have diffuse consciousness, then guess what? The brain gets way less electrocuted during the day. It's definitely not the same state, though, because a flow state is focused in a relaxed way. Normally, there's like a focus to a tiny little point, which eventually leads to stress headaches in the brow, versus the diffuse focus, which is more of a loop in a different location. So the more you know.
When flow generally, it's equanimity of mind, body, and spirit in time and place, so that you're fully in the moment, in your body, at the time. And from a cognitive, from an area of research like expertise, this thing flow generally refers to expert performance, mostly in athleticism. That if you did a certain sport and you did your training, and then you're in the performance, you're at the competition, and your body just does what it's supposed to do, and you're in flow as the controller of your body, but not like in a practice mode where you're thinking about what you should do. You're just doing it because you're in the complete totality of the moment. And then also is the connection generally with your forbidden activities like um, forbidden sexual relations or violence, where the person is in the complete totality of their body at their moment when they're having forbidden sexual relations, that their cognitive functions has been turned off, and they're just thinking about what they're doing with their body at the moment, and there's no other connection to the soul or the cognitive function, and there's not even necessarily a thought about should I do this or should I do that. It's just the person controlling their body. And so if that flow, what does it mean to have the cognitive function turned off, to where the person is no longer planning and thinking about what they're doing, but they're just acting in the moment. With the so Freud calls it the oceanic feeling, and he himself said he never experienced it, and he's not sure that it actually exists, although he observes that other people seem to feel this feeling quite often, but is hesitant to accept that even such a thing exists. Versus if you're trying to do a scientific understanding about expert performance, if you're saying like the brain takes up like 30% of bodily energy, and if you're trying to do a physical activity that providing the brain with thought, withdrew from the Olympics, or said she was in the middle of her jump and she forgot what to do, if generally she's in flow and just lives in the moment, and when she's in the competition isn't thinking, isn't planning, but is just fully living the moment and controlling her body, and that's the flow state. And and people feel that flow state, and then they desire to have it again, and possibly through drugs, and usually it mentioned, God forbid, sexual activity, where sexual activity is usually the quintessential flow state, where the person is completely in the moment and their cognitive thought has been turned off, where they're not thinking and they're acting just in the moment with their body. And that's the quintessential flow state. Versus if you're going to say some sort of esoteric enlightened spiritual flow state, where just some ability to be in equanimity of mind, body, spirit, time, and place in all circumstances. So you'd be like chanting Hare Krishna on a busy street corner, that you're in the time, place, and circumstance, that you still have equanimity of mind, body, and spirit, chanting on a busy street corner.
I guess what I would say is I don't necessarily associate the soul with consciousness or that top-down kind of abstraction. And I think when you get out of that, the way I would see it is that you're getting closer to source when you remove those things that are closer to the material world, like instincts that are created by selective pressures that are dependent upon the material world. So like just to say, well, I don't think I can put it better.
That really doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, is the soul connected to these physical instincts that are, again, circumstantial and related to evolutionary pressures? Or is the soul
entangled? Everything's entangled, and whether the soul exists depends on how you define it. I feel that a soul is a theological concept that I don't really need to define it, because I can just define consciousness and then say, take from that whatever you'd like with regards to a soul.
We can use the word consciousness if that's better, but the
That
state
doesn't work either, because consciousness is a process rather than a thing. So it's consciousness is something that something does rather than something that something is, which is a very subtle distinction, but we undergo conscious processes, but ourselves, our true essence is not conscious. It's what our true essence is, more geometric or quasi-geometric, which is where you get into the question of like what is that animates, what it is that simulates our impression of selfness, which is geometric. And then you have to get into like a monadic argument as to like emanations and what is the true nature and ultimate reconciling of, that branch point into what they call the demiurge. No, I don't promote Gnosticism.
It would also be like the Hindu renunciation, that you could only be in the moment when it's like, oh, I have no worries. Like you're at the beach or at the nature, you're at Half Dome or some incredible nature thing, and you forget all your worries, and your only sensory experience is the greatness of the physical phenomenon that you're facing. Saying Freud, you mentioned Freud, God forbid, focus on sexual activity, like the experience of having sex or something like that. But could also be like being at a beach or in nature where you have no worries. But then you're saying like, no, I'm a man of substance. I always have worries. I have a business. I have a family. I have responsibility, and I never have flow because I'm always have in the back of my mind my responsibilities. And so you'd be a renunciate, a sannyasi who has renounced everything. You're saying, I no longer have responsibility toward my family. I no longer have any possessions. I'm no longer running a business. I'm just a renunciate, living in the forest, begging rice for my daily substance, and I have absolutely no worries at the moment. So if you're saying that flow state is actually a negative thing because it's a skirting of your responsibilities, and to say like, no, you cannot be free of your worries because you should be worrying. You do have responsibilities, and if you try to free your mind of your responsibilities, that's a sign of immaturity. That's why
they're
Freud,
not mutually exclusive. Being in a flow state doesn't preclude duty. I just said it earlier. The flow state allows you to do more duties. I can do more because I see the value of enshrining a flow state, and that's what enlightenment ultimately is the supreme flow state, where it all just flows right back.
Well, I mean, if Freud was arguing that the flow state doesn't actually exist, and saying that the people who typically experience a flow state and what they attribute to that state, or even expert physical performance, where if it's a mountaineer or an athlete doing some incredible feat, and maybe they're a homeowner, maybe they have a business, maybe they have a family, but at the moment of their flow state, none of that is on their mind. And whether that's possible or whether that's a good or bad thing, that the great mountaineer who could forget about their family and their possessions in order to do a great feat at the moment, may not be the greatest father, because they could forget about their everything else. And if they could forget about their family, they probably do quite often, and they're not likely to fulfill their dharma. So I mean, Jennifer is talking about hypothetical, like this magical flow where you could forget about your responsibilities and live in the moment, but also fulfill all of your responsibilities.
I never said anything about forgetting about responsibilities, did I? I never
I'm saying
said that.
that's the
You're
point of the
protecting
general state of the flow is where you're completely in the moment and you're don't have this larger cognitive control, like even the state to say free from
that. Whoa,
worries.
whoa, whoa. No, it's a
You're
higher
saying that
state of
people experience
control. It's a higher state of
people
control.
experience the flow state with freedom from worries, and saying is that a good thing or a bad thing? You're kind of like related to the laughter.
It's not
It's
good,
it's not
bad.
it's
It's
not
what do you want? It's results oriented. It's if you want this, then you do this. And if you want, some stuff, there's going to be roadblocks, egotistical roadblocks. So you go in the driving manual. That's
There's
all.
like T jump, and he's like a Freudian textbook case where he's just telling you the only thing that is in the back of his mind is hot blondes. If like saying that T jump might be doing all this stuff, but like Freud was right. If you opened up T jump's head and looked on the inside, like the only thing in his head is like these hot blondes that he's desiring.
I
And
have a hard time believing that. Like, I think once he gets the hot blondes, maybe he'll realize he wants something else, like a ham sandwich or a fine wine or something.
You don't think he got the hot blondes? Maybe it was
I
like
have no
destiny
idea.
or something. I mean, he's got the hot blondes. He's got the proof.
Well, like he
You're saying
said
that you're
recently
like a
on his
rapper.
show. I don't
You're a
exactly know
rapper,
when
a
he said
famous
on
person who has the hot blondes.
do it. He didn't say
I always joke to
recently on
people,
his
it's like
show.
if you were
But if
really
a guy
if you were
says-
really a ladies' man, you would have two on your lap right now. So you say, okay,
If a
T
guy
Jump's
says,
obviously
"I
not
want
really a
hot
ladies' man.
blondes,"
He doesn't have
he's
one
not
on his
getting
lap right
laid.
now.
If a
Well, I'm
guy
saying,
says,
okay,
"I
T
want
Jump.
hot blondes," he ain't getting laid.
Well, I'm saying because if
Let's
you're saying
go.
he's not destiny. You're saying if he was really a lady, or like JF, if he's really a ladies' man, he'd have one on his lap right now. So he's just desiring something he doesn't have. But saying the one that has one on his lap right now, you're saying that is satisfied his desire, and now he no longer, he's sublimated his desire, and know that the fact that he has a hot blonde on his lap right now means that he no longer desires hot blondes. And that doesn't appear to be the phenomenon. Saying that
I don't know if there's some type of conservation of desire, or I was gonna say reclining returns, but no,
if
it's
you're like
diminishing.
Destiny achieved what T Jump desired.
Like there.
So T Jump is a Destiny wannabe. He Destiny got the hot blonde, and therefore he stopped thinking about
Don't
it.
say that. I'm not going to be able to unsee that. T Jump's not as bad as Destiny, is he?
Well, he's a
Man, in
wannabe
his
Destiny.
server.
T Jump is a wannabe.
Why
Destiny.
am I in his server then?
Because Destiny fulfilled his desires in front of his whole audience.
So we're just waiting for the tension to break.
Or even like Ethan Ralph, God forbid, who produced his own sex tape.
I can't say anything.
I mean, ask Luke Ford, the expert in the subject. Like, no, I don't think getting the hot blonde means you. There is the law of diminishing returns, but like, no, I mean, generally, that King Solomon, you got 100, you want 200, you get one hot blonde, you want two. You want what your desires increase, not diminish.
Okay. Well, maybe one day you'll experience something else.
Personally, I think it's T Jump. It's all numbers up there. I don't think he's motivated by lust. I think he's like a computer. He's very diagnostic. And he wants you to believe this. He wants you to believe that he's a man driven by carnal desires. But in fact, I've just snapped something.
Well, I think he's just publicly being honest. He's saying he's an incel, and he works because he understands the nature of the material realm.
He doesn't want to have to go into his personal desires, which I'm inclined to agree with, by the way.
Like that, I mean, the ethics of the sages say the secret to a happy life is loving work. So, I mean, T Jump has the realization that in order to have a good life, you have to work. But he says he doesn't desire work. He desires carnal pleasures, and that he works because he wants to achieve his desire of his carnal pleasures. But I'm saying that in order, like a Freudian, example, you're saying that he works hard in order to achieve his carnal desires.
Hmm. You want to go ahead, Krabby?
What about your appearance, your debate? That was very entertaining. This is Week in Review. Did you already do that? I may have missed it.
Which debate, dear?
There was an appearance on. I remember her name. Her name is. Where is it? Sorry, you were debating. Leo Phillips was there on a panel. Wasn't that this week? And it came down to the question of peer review. And did you already talk about that?
Did you make clips? Did you just want to play your clips?
I could try to find the bit.
Amy Newman. I apologize. I'm so sorry. Amy Newman.
I could go ahead and find the bit with the peer review if we want to listen in for a couple minutes. You guys would just have to mute. And then I can play the audio through. I figured out how to do that. Yay. Just have to cue it. Is that okay, or what do we think?
Go for it.
All thumbs up from me.
Just post in the chat when you want me to stop. How's that sound? Just going to advance it here. All right.
My race is done anyway.
I'll be able to hear it in a minute. If somebody can understand what you're saying and can offer criticism, all right, it looks like he didn't mute it, but I'm going to mute him right now. Some stuff, there's nothing to criticize, and to criticize it, you look like an idiot. I'm not going to look like an idiot. Okay, somehow it's not quite working here. Let's see. It looks like my computer's having a bit of a hard time playing this video here. So yeah, that was the problem at work. Was like criticism for
That's
nothing.
fine.
Like,
I can keep the audience entertained.
This is like peer review. We have
my haircut is fantastic.
It's going.
Okay.
It's going. Sorry, we're good. If there's nothing wrong, you don't have to criticize. Then you're cheapening what criticism means, because it's just like, well,
maybe
no matter what I do, I'm going to get railed. I can't win. Fuck it. I'm not even going to try, or I'm going to intentionally, God forbid, intentionally make mistakes. So now that I look back at it, I'm pretty. It's just really no wonder that so much stuff now makes way more sense. This last little while to me. Gee, I'm glad I'm me. All right, let's see what else is going on. I won't bore the rest. I don't know how long everyone wants to keep hanging out. I'm just basically chilling, but I wanted to make a note of what I felt were better one-liners, and also sort of do this format of stream where I just noticed that that's how some people do it. They're like, Ralph, like, I could stream for another, let's see, how long have I been streaming for? A while. 2 hours. I could go on for another 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, and I wouldn't be anywhere near as self-indulgent as Ralph. JD, stop messaging me. I can hear every single one of your Skype messages coming through. Okay? Every single one. Stop messaging me. I'm live. This guy seems to somehow message me every goddamn time I'm live. What's going on? Okay, I'm just trying to queue up the next bit be accommodating, but it seems to be. For those of you who having a very hard
for
time.
a while.
Is there a clip running?
You have some idea.
It's
What-
just a video.
Okay.
We've been
Yeah,
dealing
it's
with
going now. Just mute yourself, please.
do-
Don't unmute. Thanks.
surprise. I'm a proponent of formal education, and so
Same.
like the fact that some, but guess what?
Yeah.
Most people can't do that. Most
It doesn't
people
mean
need
it's
formal
education's useless. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
still a great thing.
Well, I'm not
There's-
gonna. I'm not gonna get a mechanic job because I don't know nothing about mechanics. I'm gonna avoid that.
YouTube, dude.
What's that got to
Exactly.
do with anything?
Which is why that goes back to like, so what makes you expect a dentist to know anything about mechanics? Like,
Oh,
if they
boy.
did, why would they not have gone into that field?
All right,
we
and
are
Amy,
gonna cover.
Yeah,
got
I
this.
like it.
Woohoo! And all right,
Exactly.
ladies and gentlemen, we are bringing in the mimes. We have been talking. Does
The super
God
straight
exist?
rhymes.
The
Don't
super
forget.
straight
They're
rhymes.
super-
Do 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 do. Mana do 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 do. I'm contractually
They-
obligated to finish that.
They're super duper ultra maxi extreme ultra super
Oh,
straight mimes.
Hey, for-
This is not working. I can't seem to get the right time. So I went on a rant about respecting the host at 2:51, so that's a good one. 158 has peer review thing, which for some reason didn't play any bit of it that I wanted, or I didn't hear it anyway. And then there was a bit about whether you can prove axioms. So I don't want to try to play this again. I'm just gonna keep going. We can just talk about the ideas because I just don't think my computer can handle it right now. I would have had to pre-record them. Are you still there, Krabby? Oh, it looks like Doovid might have lost his internet. We'll see what happens. Yeah. You're not really getting educated in those streams, though, are you? You're just sort of talking. So I suppose that's perhaps appealing, but I wouldn't think that's wouldn't confuse that with education. Yay, Doovid's back. That's good. Everything okay, Doovid? Whoops. Here. What?
Welcome back, everybody, from the clip. We are all.
It didn't work. The clip did not work. I'm sorry. I'll
watching.
pre-record it. I'll pre-record it next time.
Aiken mentioned the meowly. And yeah, I'll take a look at it. I mean, he seems more focused on, say possibly enjoyment is where I was taking a more level of just expert performance. And, so I mentioned the Freudian and kind of the, to put it straight towards sexual activity in terms of, possible enjoyment or the freedom from worry, as opposed to the conditions for expert performance that may have nothing to do with happiness. I mean, there could be relations to expert performance, and happiness, but I was looking at it generally as disconnected of this state of superior performance. Flow generally as the equanimity of mind, body, spirit, however you look at it, all at one point. That could be in terms of happiness, like I'm finally happy. I'm finally, at one with myself and nature, as opposed to optimal functioning of the human body, like producing expert performance, and then concentrate specifically like on chess or like some random calculation, and I've brought all of my concentration just to focus on this one subject, even though I really don't give a crap about this subject. The only thing that drives me is hot blondes, and the whole reason I'm focusing on this crummy subject is just the small hope that this will bring me enough fame and acclaim that possibly one day I too will have a hot blonde or some type of Freudian view on the matter.
Krabby, please mute yourself when you're not talking, because there's a lot of sound coming through. I had to mute you again, but it would be nice if anybody coming on the show could just mute themselves if they're not talking, because unless you have a pro mic, and even in that case, there's a lot of background noise, and it is distracting, especially for us highly sensitive people. Do babies have flow? Yes. Non-flow is learned. So it has to do with inhibiting an impulse, what they call impulse control. But I think inhibition is more, because there's an arising desired act and a countervailing inhibition.
See any books that he had written.
He's a demigod, apparently. What a strange choice of words for an atheist. Why is it the atheists who always want to talk the most about God? I mean, I've gone entire streams and not mentioned God even once. I'm sure of it. Because you don't really need to. God's usually an observation or a conclusion, not a premise. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to torpedo the combo there. Whatever shall we talk about next? The subjects on this thing. Go ahead.
We were going to talk about your. I guess I was bringing up the idea about peer review, and if you wanted to talk about that, I thought you may have already because I didn't watch the first bit, but I thought that was very interesting. And then Leo Phyllis. There was later in the debate, Leo Phyllis says, if I'm trying to remember it accurately, he says, well, it's true that I can't know anything, or we can't know anything for certain. It's all probability. It's all, we know it probably. And I think that's something that at least I like to, like a hawk, swoop in on when I hear that mentioned, when I hear somebody say, well, I don't know anything. That's like, if you're in a debate, that's kind of like a very easy.
Guess whose conclusion that was? Fuckbags.
Well,
aka Socrates.
Yeah, but in a debate, right? The context for knowing things for certain in peer review is different from metaphysical things. There's sort of a colloquial element here. I mean, the way he
has no means to change metaphysics, and that argument didn't get acknowledged. Leo just turned into, basically sounded like a broken machine.
Well, anyway, this argument about peer review is very interesting, and the funding of the research being done by mostly academia. I think JF has a really good explanation since he was also on the inside of the peer review system. There may be some microphone.
Yeah, I had a prof who hated it so much that he basically was, but yeah, that definitely happened. So there appeared to be some differences of opinions, didn't there? The cracks were obvious in retrospect.
Well, I hate to do the always sunny Max science is wrong sometimes, but I mean, when we're talking about peer review, really, you just have to go back into time and like, I think you put it really well that there are a 1% that are actually doing things, and to swallowed and learn from like Heaviside and Steinmetz it's an unfounded assumption, at least so far.
We can deny that, which just makes us have less access to the knowledge that the hierarchy represents. It's very rigid. So that's hopefully a salient lesson. Doovid, when you crunched, it threw me off a little bit.
I'm wondering what the crunch could be because I saw soy sauce coming out, and now there's I'm thinking like a crunchy spring roll, maybe.
Seaweed, teriyaki seaweed.
Yeah,
well, can
so
you
Leo
red
Phileas
pill
just
me?
needs to stop fucking using shitty metaphors. Everybody needs to go on a fast for metaphors for at least a month. I took a 30-year fucking fast from religion. You can do a month off these shit metaphors and think how disgusting these metaphors truly are. You should never almost use a metaphor unless you have a near perfect knowledge of something and you have to abstract a simplification, then make a metaphor. I'm hearing like 10 metaphors a day. It's like J-Rock with Know What I'm Saying off Trailer Park Boys. Go ahead, Rabbi.
Will you red pill me on Leela? I don't know anything about this concept. What is Leela?
A playful way of
This is
Krishna and the 15,000 gopis. Is that what you're alluding
Yeah,
to?
I mean, Leela could be most, translated into pastime, and it could refer to, generally the human-like or the material activity of the gods during their incarnations. So, Krishna, like the Leela specifically, like the dance where he's separated in, I mean, it's not in the Gita. It's saying the Gita. If you want to call the Gita war,
Is it
as
Krishna
Leela
when he was a
also,
kid? Whatever that was.
we could look at Leela. Leela specifically is pastime, and it could refer to any.
Yes, God's pastime, playing around.
Usually, it
eating
refers
butter.
to specifically when Krishna split into 15,000 men in order to satisfy all of the gopis at once. So typically that's why I said Leela is referred to like a form of perversion that Hindu priests use to trick women out of sex. Where Krishna, you could interpret it in the Orthodox approach that whatever reason you had all these unmarried or these desperate women, so therefore Krishna split himself into tens of thousands of replicates of himself in order that he could satisfy all these women at once. And so the Leela specifically referring to this activity of Krishna of having sex with countless women, which is obviously a dangerous subject. And
But it's just so fucking disgusting to express it that way.
but I mean, if you take a certain approach, like as a duty that he had done it, specifically as a duty to benefit these women, or versus Leela is a general just pastime of the gods. That if you're like story time, where if you're talking about a great person, like you're talking like Tesla or something like that. So like a Leela, wouldn't be one of his inventions or ideas. It'd be a story about his life, that was somewhat relatable to any given person. So not just Krishna and the Leela, and not just specifically the rasa. The rasa is specifically the dance where he splits into multiple personalities, but any pastime. And so I mentioned that the Leela of Krishna's youth versus if you want to consider Bhagavad Gita and killing people on the battlefield as a Leela also, but you're saying that there's lessons to learn from stories of great people, and if you look at deities or incarnations, there's lessons to learn from the pastimes. And general Hindu temple, it's considered a good deed or a beneficial thing to just tell over the pastimes of the deities that besides for the wisdoms and just straight up kind of scientific approach to the soul, consciousness, purpose of life, that there's also stories of the great personalities, and it's beneficial to hear the stories. So if you want like Ram and Sita and Hanuman, the stories of the Ramayana, or any of these great epic stories that you might tell your kids, but also for adults or any people, it's beneficial to just hear these stories. It's beneficial to tell these stories, and so that's Leela is part of your religion. I had Jennifer used it as a cover picture for Week in Review with Robert Schiller, the Yale professor, Nobel Prize winning of economics for the Case-Shiller housing index, I think, in his recent work on narrative economics. And he mentioned of all the fields that has the least amount of narrative is usually economics and finance, where you're reducing human activity to numbers. So you don't really have like a story about person X and place and time who did this and that. You're reducing large amounts of people to numbers, and so you'd want to be more personable, like your rabbi, your priest, your guru, or even politicians. They're going to tell you a story about a specific person, and there's a lesson to learn, and you make the most human, emotional contact to give over to people when you tell stories about people. And a lot of people, that's why they like Talmud. Talmud has it has a lot of stories mixed in. So the Talmud's a lot of legalistic things that talks just about law and various debates and opinions on law. But the Talmud interspersed within that always has these stories about people, and kind of like an example to express the point. So let me tell you a story about this person, and then this will be the example to understand this deeper insight.
There's a couple of halfway decent quotes here. I won't torture people by reading them, though. Someone here, Fritjof Capra, the Tao of physics, dear God. A basic recurring theme in Hindu mythology, creation of the world by the self-sacrifice of God. Initially meaning making sacred. Sounds like sanctifying, not sacrificing, but okay. So yeah, this does appear to be quite a central concept, but I guess you could argue Hinduism has a lot of those. So yeah,
and
we don't have to belabor the point forever. It's interesting, but largely this falls largely into hidden knowledge.
It's like the impersonal God of the Abrahamic traditions that's usually seen as a judge. If you're going to have some sort of personal vision, it's a judge sitting in heaven that's weighing the good and bad deeds of mankind to issue a judgment, as opposed to a personal pagan religions that might have God partaking in human activity, and even like some Native American traditions where you have trickster gods, or even the interaction. A lot of times you like the Greek pantheon, sometimes parts of the Hindu pantheon, but a lot of like Native American, African pantheon, where there'll be sexual relations between the gods and humans, and specifically these trickster type gods that just come down and fool people for whatever reason, that like it's like some great lesson. And so it's kind of like a Leela or pastime. And so if you're the Abrahamic impersonalist, those are all forbidden. Like God would not take form, avatars. God does not incarnate. God does not take form, and certainly God would not take form to do mundane human activity, like just to play or be part of the moment. Like if you're going to think of God in any personal
Even though
way,
there's a term defined for that exact activity that we just spent 10 minutes going over.
and think that God is the lawgiver, God is the judge sitting on a throne in heaven that is going to decide, when we die, what's going to happen to us based on the sum total of our good and bad deeds.
Mm-hmm. I see it as spontaneous.
I have this book here.
No energy needed.
Yes.
Aiken, I wish you'd come on the show and explain what you mean, because you're saying a trade-off between sensitivity and selectivity. Meaning?
You hear there's a God who dances. Carl Woodham wrote a book, A God Who Dances, and the attractiveness of Krishna, like the God who dances, the God who plays the flute, as opposed to the Abrahamic God in the West that people are used to, the God who is this judge that has to scare us because anytime you do a sin or a bad deed, that God knows about it and is going to account for it, as opposed to the God that that just enjoys taking pleasure in the moment, who dances and various activities. So Leela is Sanskrit. It's a Hindu term. It's common in all pagan religions, in Native American traditions, African traditions, and any pantheistic tradition where you have a whole bunch of gods and the gods partake in human-like activities. You could call Jesus type Leelas, but Jesus is more like refined. Jesus doesn't really partake in normal human activity. Like everything Jesus does, purpose driven, and isn't if you call it like the crucifixion or the passion, Leela in a certain sense, that that's taking human form, as opposed to a Judeo Islamic tradition that would say that not even the serious Jesus who just comes down to fulfill serious things, as opposed to other pagan traditions where the gods actually enjoy and partake in human pleasures, and to put that in then in a Hindu theology where it's actually a good thing that that God comes and does these pastimes that parallel what would appear to be normal, human behavior.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, there's sort of different perspectives on things, but a lot of similarities at the end of the day. Yeah. I did get a good laugh out of Jay Dyer's stream. Put a little meme there. First stream this week. Ha ha ha. What else do we want to talk about? Let me see here. So, do peers exist? Did you, I guess, I don't know if you heard my thing, but basically my argument, Doowovid, was that like peers implies fungibility, and fungibility is almost never true between situations. And no one is even attempting to establish that you can argue fungibility. They're just presupposing fungibility in a bunch of ways based on these Bayesian priors, which still has yet to make any sense to me. Yeah. Did you want to talk about that? No? Yes?
I largely accept peer review as part of the scientific method, and your replicability and separating the idea from a person. Well, they've argued that ideas can't be separated from the people, but so the old school scientific method, like if you're determining a formula or a process that it's testable and replicatable in a different place by different people, and once the information has been given over, that it could be separated from the person, that it's true, because any person could replicate the experiment in any location and achieve the same results, versus a peer review process, which is somewhat like an initiation and an approval, where it's not necessarily like an idea that it's like if Jennifer had a theory, and like if the quantum periodic table is fundamentally true, then it doesn't need, so to say, peer review. Gravity doesn't, the theory of gravity doesn't need peer review. It could be tested and verified. So peer review in the way it is now. Lex Friedman had the person talking about money in scientific journals, and kind of the negative system now is a little different than the classical just extension of the scientific method and replicability, repeatability in different circumstances carried out in experiments. And so you have Jennifer's theory. What is actually her theory? What does it do? What does it mean to be, so to say, true? And like Ralph, like, okay, the periodic table is 3 dimensions. So what? What does that mean? What predictions does that make? And if it does make predictions, then
It
what
means
do we
be
need?
fucking happy, for fuck's sakes, for once in your life.
Well,
Not
then
you,
saying that
more so
that
Ralph.
if the
Just
3D
saying.
periodic table made those predictions, then anybody in any circumstance could replicate those experiments and see if those predictions came true. And it's got nothing to do with Jennifer. Oh, they don't need Jennifer for that. They just need her theory. And once her theory is out there, it could be replicated and reproduced, and see if the predictions that are predicted are true or not. And so if the theory doesn't actually make any predictions, it's just a method or framework or something like that. And so the peer review is going to come as like a sign of approval. And some things, like climate change, what does it mean to make predictions? What does it mean to have a theory? What does it mean to have peer review? And even if it is just approval, that like some sort of Masonic system where you need 2 advanced initiates to approve the person for them to reach the next degree, that it could serve a function like that. And so it's tough to tell. So if you're saying you need to publish, you need to clearly express your ideas. So if someone's saying like, what are you talking about?
What's
You're saying
wrong
to
with just going on to random debating streams and doing Satyagrath with my periodic table? Yeah.
Well, I mean, what does it mean?
Great
So
friend.
what?
I just wanted to come back to this Leela thing with the
Even when she said the
Nakraj thing.
periodic table was 3D, I thought my chemistry teacher in high school told me that the periodic table is 3D, and we just print it in a 2-dimensional, like not in the same way that Jennifer has it laid out. But even in high school, when I took, one thing, my chemistry teacher actually had a 3D periodic table, but it had something to do with like the D and the way the elements are in the classical laid out 2D version. And that when you add in like it's SP D or something, that the orbitals, that the third orbital is actually supposed to be, the periodic table is actually supposed to be 3-dimensional, and in the third orbital system we just put it in, so you have like 2. So when you look at the periodic table, you have 2, and then you have the 10, and then you have 6 on the right, and that's when we see the periodic table, it starts with 1 and 1, and then these columns of 2, and then the space that has 10 lower down, and then 6. Even in high school I was taught that the periodic table in reality is 3 dimensions. Jennifer's systematic way of laying that out, might be more intuitive, but like it's unclear if she's saying necessarily anything more than what my high school chemistry teacher told me.
Well, you got me. It's all just been a LARP.
When I say it's a LARP.
All right, I guess I'll just close the channel down.
What I'm saying, if my high school
I
chemistry
wasn't
teacher,
expecting anyone to make that argument, but now that you have, I must say I concede. This is superior to what I have to say. I shall sign over all my devotees to you post haste. So
did you chat ban Joanna Miller or Joanna?
if somebody was an asshole to me in the chat, and a condescending bitch, perhaps I did. I don't remember every last blobhead that I'm forced to ban in chat, sadly.
Okay,
But I
I
could
never ban
unban
anybody.
if it's
but-
a personal friend, if they promise to be nice going forward.
Okay,
I'm
well,
not asking much.
My new
Just a
friend
little
that I was
respect.
inviting on the show, but I guess you two didn't get along, and maybe you did chat ban her.
Oh my gosh, it might have just been an error. I don't remember, honestly. We had a problem with trolls rating the stream, so yeah.
Okay, so you want to just wrap up then?
Well, I don't know if we got to everything that was done during the week. Yeah, I think all the arguments pretty much we got around to them. So yeah, did you actually want me to explain what the periodic table does, or no, or you just don't think it's worth anything to say that it's in 3D because it predicts the. It's quite baffling that you can't see why that's valuable, but it predicts like all
I'd say it's not valuable. I'm saying that I'm not sure that
It says
that
more.
I'm not sure that my high school that you're saying anything that my high school chemistry teacher didn't tell me, and I'm saying no. I mean, I've heard you explain your periodic 3D table like 100 times already, but all I said was that my high school chemistry teacher said that the 3D periodic table in reality is three dimensions, and had on her desk a three-dimensional model of the periodic table. It wasn't the same as yours, but just telling the facts that when I was in high school, my chemistry teacher said the 3D table is periodic and had a 3D model of the periodic table on her desk.
Yeah. Well.
You think you're the only person who ever came? I was like, no, like my high school chemistry teacher had a 3D periodic model and made the point that when you look in the book in the 2D model, that it's actually a 3D model.
Well, it didn't look like mine, did it? So if it didn't look like mine, it's not saying the same thing as mine. I've seen alternate forms of the PT. I'm not seeing any 3D versions. It's the solution to the metaphysical grounding problem I keep bringing up over and over and over again.
But I'm saying the possibility is like, yes, it's possible that Doooovid's high school chemistry teacher, knew and understood Jennifer's theory before she was born and taught it to her high school students.
Well, if you want to show me the exact same periodic table, even then I would be suspicious because nobody can predict the Hubble effect. I mean, do you even understand that that's a considerable feat to predict the Hubble effect? The Hubble's law?
Well, you don't have to. Now you have to give yourself your own resume.
Well, you're saying it's
evidence is evidence. You're saying that it's possible that someone else did, come up with what you came up with before and taught it to other people, and the evidence is there. And you're saying, no, I am awesome, and you will not disprove that it's me that's the one that's awesome.
Well, I am awesome, but somebody else may have had a realization that the periodic table ought to be rendered in 3 dimensions. That's a perfectly reasonable assumption to make. Now, to what extent that person would have been able to tease out the generalized laws of motion which conform to the true minimum energy considerations, I'll say the burden of proof is on the dissenter for that.
It's me that's awesome, not your high school chemistry teacher, dude, but I'm sorry.
I hope I can share awesomeness with your teacher, to be honest, and I'd like nothing more. It's just
Probably in her
people are
70s.
stuck in the coordinate system of the Socratic method, which
She's in her
presumes
70s now.
there's a
like,
flaw in reasoning,
she's
which
on
obviously
Facebook,
there
but
isn't.
she retired like over a decade ago. I think she's on Facebook, but and maybe I'll reach out to her and ask her about the 3D periodic model that she had on her table.
Are you saying like a regular periodic table, but just like like in 3D, like a rectangular prism type deal? Is that what you're saying? Like, how was it three-dimensional? Can you get us an example? Why does 3D make a difference? Because it predicts all the orbitals. So it'll predict your chemical orbitals, but it'll also predict quantum orbitals because this is the matrix upon which the photonic field is rooted. So the QMPT is, I don't want to say trivial, but it's not always clear how it's relevant. It's more like on the level of the R3, like the linear algebra R3 thing. The quantum periodic table is trivial in that sense, unless you want to go into like chemistry, in which case you can use permutations of that shape to determine the structural enantiomers, etc. Which I wanted to mention that, like, I do want to do that, but that's going to take someone else basically doing the bulk of the work. I mean, just dictating how to do it. I don't have time to write a book on chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, her point, I mean, this is in high school, I can remember, was, I mean, the periodic table has your S, P, and D
My meme rules.
orbitals.
Hard.
And the periodic table in its most common formulation that people see is you have your S column, then your D column, then your P column, and then you have on the bottom, what's the fourth was SPD? What would be the one for the fourth column that's stuck on the bottom? Is that a different orbital? Is it SPD and what's after that?
F.
That's F, SPD, and then F. Yeah, so she, said that the S and P, that really the periodic table should be multidimensional, and that the SPD, and she actually had some sort of model, I forget, it looked like a cube or something like that, where the D wasn't stuck in the way it was. That something I can't visualize in my head how her periodic table looked, but she said that the D orbital being stuck in the way it is was, just like a heuristic, that it wasn't accurate, and that really it should be three-dimensional. And she had some sort of three-dimensional, like periodic table on her desk. And this was 25 years ago.
An anecdote, a 25-year-old anecdote about maybe a 3D periodic table. Like, now I'm just
It's not maybe.
like,
I'm saying I remember very clearly when I was taught
do you have any
chemistry in
idea
high school that she told me the 3D table,
What's
3D periodic, the periodic table
metaphor?
is in fact three-dimensional, and that she had some sort of three-dimensional periodic table on her desk. That, like, no, I mean, I could probably, I have friends on Facebook that were in chemistry class together with me, but like, no, I have no doubt in my mind that I was in high school chemistry class. My teacher told me the periodic table is in fact three-dimensional, and I remember very clearly she had a 3D periodic table on her desk.
What does that change exactly?
It didn't necessarily change anything.
Oh.
You're saying that when Jennifer told me her 3D periodic table, that it wasn't surprising to me because my high school chemistry teacher told me the periodic table's three-dimensional, and I have a vague memory of her having some sort of 3D periodic table model on her desk.
It's 3 + 1 into 3 + 1, which is just trippy as fuck because we have 3 + 1 on our scale too, which appears to be everything, but clearly isn't. Sorry, my computer's having some trouble, as usual. At least I can still see that the thing is green. That's good. I had a here we go. This is the one you want to focus on if you want to get the good stuff. This doesn't even directly have anything to do with the QMPT. Okay, so once you get involved in the like to use the QMPT, you have to like recurse the photon field into this potential field, which can be coded into a quantum computer. But anyway, this is not even, this is more predicting, I would say this predicts more stuff that's practicable, and it only uses photons, what I have displayed right now. And that's really just the mechanics of a single sphere, not the entire periodic table lattice. So it's sort of two questions. Like the periodic table is more just of a, you know what a yantra is? Like something pretty to look at that's like, ooh, yeah. Does that sort of explain it? I don't know. Hello?
How does your model explain the creation of hydrogen?
The way that it would understand the creation of hydrogen is that it happens when time is precipitated. So time and causality isn't the same. So that's our biggest bias, is that time equals causality, but it's not. There's time bubbles. So there's like a new instance of time per bubble. In each time there's a bubble, there's going to be the elements forming based on the probability of their formation, which is determined by their relative their energies relative to the others possible in the lattice. So you're always thinking of it quantum mechanically, but also thermodynamically, where there's a particular amount of mass energy that has 118 possible states it could go in, and it's going to populate those states proportionally to their energy, in the sense that the lower the energy, the more populated it'll be. But there's an additional, this isn't just answering it for hydrogen, this is answering it for all of them. There's two things that predict the relative energies of the elements. There's the mass and the charge. So that's why you have it's not monotonic, but it's a trending downward pattern of relative abundance of elements, if that clears it up. Basically, everything is created light, time, and elements, i.e. differentiated mass, i.e. electrical differentials, that all arises at the same time when there's quantum state exclusion in a dark matter, the timeless state. Anyway, hopefully that clears it up.
Well,
the point is that it's a unified model. It's the full picture. There's nothing missing at the end. It's just like, okay, that's how everything works. Cool. Doesn't have to be weird, overly confusing anymore.
is it possible to explain to maybe a fifth grader, like if they were to ask you, what is hydrogen made of? Since we know that hydrogen, well, all states of matter are dependent upon hydrogen or some form of decay of hydrogen. What is it made of?
Well, everything that's exists is not material, first of all. But what exists that is material is made up of mass. And
Mary,
that
what about-
mass can unzipper itself to have a polarization, i.e. a dipole, an electric dipole. Go ahead, Doovid.
So I'm looking here. Timothy Stowe in the 1990s. I'm going to do a screen share. So I'm just trying to remember what maybe she had on her desk. And so these diagrams look semi-familiar. So this one's Timothy Stowe, who is a physicist, and his one actually looks similar to yours. If here you have kind of like, it actually looks pretty similar to yours in some ways, although you have an inverse one with one at the center that expands outside, as opposed to this was in the 1990s. Timothy Snow's I showed a blog and a link of just here's various conceptualizations of the periodic table, and so here the classic where you have your S, D, and then P, and why we have these D's in the center, that hydrogen, then helium, then lithium, and then you have the space at 10 before you get to the next 6, and then really your F orbitals should be so the elongated periodic table would actually have the whole F column stuck in here. So usually the F column is placed on the bottom, but for the actual representation, the F column really there should be should be the stuck in the middle, so that there's a huge gap. And so why they put the d orbital like that, and so that people trying to use a multi-dimensional analysis to group this together actually goes back to some of the early models, and just why the periodic table is shown here. So we say really element 57 here is at the F column, and so where you have helium, there should be another 14 columns in an elongated periodic table for the F column, but as convention, we stick the F column at the bottom, and that we have the D column like that instead of elongating the periodic table to use a three-dimensional representation, that goes back into the history of the creation of the periodic table. So just mentioning here the Stowman in the 90s. I think she had this one on her desk too. This one looks familiar. There's a pyramidal version of the periodic table. Here's another. But it's saying no, Jennifer's not the only one with a 3D periodic table, and saying yes, my high school chemistry teacher had at least one, maybe she even had multiple ones of these 3D periodic tables on her desk. And when I was taught chemistry in high school, my teacher made the point to clearly mention that the periodic table should in fact be three-dimensional.
Well, sure, like I said, it's self-evident in retrospect. But what does that even mean?
This was 1994 or something when I took chemistry. We're talking 1994.
Uh-huh.
And saying teachers retired since, and saying that.
Is this some sort of troll thing?
No, I'm just telling you factual. That's when you do submit an article, you do the history of the idea. So it's saying no, obviously, a three-dimensional periodic table is not a unique idea.
And nor is it my only idea, and nor is it particularly much in my teachings, is what I'm saying. What is it? It's kind of like everything and nothing. When you have a more subtle understanding, you can glean more direct info from the QMPT.
We just had to put it on paper that we make it two-dimensional just to fit it on paper, but the understanding of the d orbitals is that what sense does it make that the d orbital and the f orbital, the way the periodic table is written is obviously a shorthand, because the way that it's drawn is that we go from 56 to 72 on the table. That when anyone looking at the periodic table, when you get to element 56, 57 is on the bottom, and next to 57 is 72, right?
I don't know. What's the point?
Well, I don't point to anything. I'm saying, like, death will set us free. The point in the material realm and trying to understand the periodic table. And so just looking at the classical understanding of the periodic table is that for whatever reason, when we get to element 56, the next one is 72, and that you have to look to the bottom of the table to see element 57. So I'll just do I found another screen share for a second. So the classic periodic table really should look like this. And here you can see it by orbitals. You have S, F, D, P, S. So that when you have these just different representations of, but on any table, when you go on a classic periodic table, when you get to element 56, the next one is not 57. You have these two lines at the bottom, and that line at the bottom is element 57, and the one after 56 is 72. And so obviously the periodic table as it is just a shorthand expression of some sort of idea for whatever reason that we need to use a shorthand. And so all these alternative structures, so to say, here's just web pages that have a history, and you could see the history of the idea. Here's 1928, Janet, and going back to Timothy Stowe. So here you have three-dimensional. Here's Paul Girard in 1986 already has his three-dimensional periodic table. I don't see a picture here, but Timothy Stowe, as I mentioned, had his periodic table also in 1986. Then 2005, 2006, Valerie Zimmerman has his periodic table. So I don't know the exact.
I guess that one looked too much like a dick.
I think I showed.
Yeah, well,
I showed.
someone was bound to get it right one of these days. It just had to be me. Dang. And the comments in the chat, I want to display the chat comments, but they're turning into some horrible spam going against my wishes that I don't want false ideology promoted on my channel. Okay, that includes your zombie corpse worship. Seriously. In Discord. Or whatever you do. Not here. Thanks. I'm allergic to cats.
I've showed it before. I gotta find it at the Michigan State Particle Accelerator, and the real, because the periodic table doesn't show the major isotopes. So if you had
Sorry, are you going to say something? You kind of trailed off there. You still there? Hello?
oh, here it is.
Okay.
Now I'm trying to look for the here it is. So is my screen share still working?
Yeah, looks like it to me. I can move
So
it
this-
over a bit, I suppose.
This is the periodic table with the isotopes. So generally the periodic table just has the main mass number where you find the most common element. So here was a periodic table with all the conceivable isotopes, and I guess the colored ones, I forget the exact coding. But if you looked at a starting number of one, I guess you have hydrogen, and you could have hydrogen with 2 neutrons, or whatever possibility of the various isotopes, and so a periodic table that just has your main chemical elements and the main um, mass number that they're found in largest amount, versus some sort of periodic table that has University of Michigan rare isotope collider, includes all of the isotopes. And I've shown this on Week in Review before, but like, obviously a 3-dimensional could also probably include the possible isotopes within her model, that you don't need to come up with a different model that would include the possible isotopes.
They're included. Basically, they're converse actions. The electron field is the sort of the converse of the neutron-proton field. So there's whatever's going on the chemical level, it's sort of the converse on the nuclear level. So the metaphor is, you know how fluorine's really reactive, but then neon isn't. So the most reactive is adjacent to the max stability state. It's the opposite with the nuclear. The farther it goes, the more reactive it is from the stable state. They're kind of like a mirror image of each other, if that clears it out. But yeah, there's only an electrical and a massive action. There's no strong or weak nuclear forces. It's all just uncertainty. So the product of delta T, delta E is bounded by a constant, which I can try to get a diagram, but I didn't prepare one beforehand. So just the periodic table. Like the periodic table is just, it's a pretty thing. Nothing wrong with looking at pretty things, is there? I guess I am talking to someone who thinks laughing is degenerate, so one never knows. Okay, I don't see it.
Yeah, I've said many times the Talmud says about the Roman general's daughter that sees the ugly rabbi.
I don't think I've heard that one.
I've said over, so, she sees the what type of souls, and said, your father should store his wine. And she switches the wine to gold and silver vessels, and the wine spoils. And so there's a lesson that that wine stores better in ugly vessels. And so the rabbi, and so the Roman general's daughter, learns her lesson. But then she asks the question, well, what about this rabbi who's very good looking? Not all rabbis are ugly. And the rabbi said, had the rabbi been ugly, that he would be even more wise. But the lesson is that wisdom is more properly stored in an ugly container. And wisdom spoils in a beautiful container. And a beautiful woman has been the cause of many a man's death. That
Oh, you know what? Yeah, it did, because my well, I'm
probably just buff.
died, but
Well, now that we're not really offline, Doooovid, do you have any interest in maybe playing a no time limits game of chess?
No, not really. Like I'm even trying to stop playing chess. Playing chess is also like bad character. But I do it as a keep my mind sharp, and just to give myself something. But I'm trying to limit my chess play. I played chess even today, even a few hours, just because I lost concentration. But not generally, I'm trying to chess is just. Besides, but why you wanted to play chess?
Oh no, I'll take victory by concession.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just-
And I've shown the
just, yeah.
research. I mention it is that most people play chess because they like winning.